Preston? Here. Randy Kelly?
Here.
Councilmember Broughton? Here. Dr. Varner?
Present.
Vice President Davis?
Present.
Mr. Gordy?
Present.
Mr. Furley?
Here.
Councilmember White? Present. President Tim Scott?
Present.
9 present.
Thank you. Report from Subcommittee on Minutes, please.
Report of Subcommittee on Minutes. To the Common Council of the City of South Bend, the subcommittee has inspected the minutes of the November 28, 2016 meeting of the council and found them to be correct. Therefore, we recommend the same be approved.
Motion to accept.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We will go to special business. First, a few announcements. These are the following items on the agenda that are being continued. HPC appeal process will be continued to 1/23. 6616 on water rates is continued to 1/9. 1685 Portage Prairie, 1689 Kovalevsky project, and 1690 Vice President Oliver Davis resolution on neighborhood plans is all set for 1/9 as well. Just one other announcement. We have members of Boy Scout Troop 111 here. Would they please stand? Look at that, one trooper. Thank you for joining us. It'll be one impactful night. Thank you. And look at that, one trooper, a true trooper. So, with that, Ms. Fowler, would you read 1692, please?
1692, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, publicly congratulating and applauding actor and performer R.J. Walker for his accomplishment in the acting industry.
Is there a presenter?
That would be me.
Thank you. Anyone else in your entourage?
I am alone at this time, but I would like to invite Mr. R.J. Walker and his family, anyone wishing to come up and join us.
Please.
I need my name and...
Name and address, please. Yes.
Regina Williams Preston, 838 North Elmer Street, South Bend, Indiana. Council District 2. Come on over. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you tonight a very talented young man, Mr. R.J. Walker, a native son of whom we are all very, very proud, and we're here tonight to honor and recognize. We actually had a multimedia presentation prepared for you. However, we need to work on our sound, apparently. So what I've done is, as you'll notice, there's a commercial right here. That's kind of like a still frame of it, and you see our guy right there. Isn't he awesome? And I want you all to Google that tonight. That's your homework. You remember I'm a teacher, so I'm always giving y'all stuff to do. Okay, so R.J. Walker, he's in the Slim Jim commercial. Check it out. From what I hear, this was actually appeared in 2015 Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It was performed at that time. And was actually noted as Spike TV, one of the funniest commercials of 2015. So I guarantee, when you Google that tonight, it'll be a nice way to laugh and then take a little rest tonight. Thank you very much. All right, so on to official business. Whereas the South Bend Common Council notes that R.J. Walker, a South Bend native, is an inspiring actor and performer who has appeared in numerous commercials, television shows, and film. R.J. is a star on the rise, having recently been cast in a starring role in the True TV's new television sitcom. And this may not be the most recent, but I will continue. Whereas R.J. was born on November 30th, 1989 in South Bend, Indiana. I have a question, a process issue. This is the wrong resolution. Should I read the actual one that's going to be on record?
You got it?
I do. I do have a different one. I'm sorry. Yes. I don't know how I ended up. I don't know how that happened, but I
It
will.
needs to be a substitute.
We'll need it.
I'll entertain a motion to accept the substitute for 1692.
Because that's what was in our packet, right? Nope, it's on my computer. Should I read that one? All right, excuse me a moment.
This is true, like, acting, right?
This is improv.
Improv, is that it? Okay.
This is cool.
I have no clue.
Oh, signed it, everybody has it? Yeah. No, that's, I know who that is.
At this point, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you.
What's your name?
R.J. Walker.
Regina?
Yes.
I have it.
You have it here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Okay, one more time. Whereas the South Bend Common Council notes that R.J. Walker, a South Bend native, is an inspiring actor and performer, building an impressive catalog of work. Since being signed in 2012, he has booked over 20 commercials, 5 guest star, co-star roles in television, and scored a leading role in the sci-fi film Two Lava, Two Lantula, with Steve Guttenberg and Michael Winslow. R.J. is a star on the rise. Whereas R.J. was born to Randall Walker Sr. and Joanne Walker on November 30th, 1989 in South Bend, Indiana. An active and animated child, he was a natural performer, always dancing and prancing around the house. His interest in theater was piqued early on in the Riley High School production of Little Women, where he played the role of the quintessential father figure, Father March. During his time at Bethel College, R.J. tested his range by playing the hard-living tough guy, Chandler Marlowe, in the production of The Butler Did It, and performing with Bethel College's traveling acting troupe, the Genesians. He continued his education in the arts as a student at Indiana University South Bend. Whereas, in 2011, he ventured to the West Coast on his first visit to Los Angeles. Nothing went as planned. With every intention of returning to school, R.J. found himself low on cash, not even enough to get a bus ticket home. Sleeping on his friend's couch, he played the role of starving artist, searching Craigslist for odd jobs as he worked in the background of the industry as a transcriber for the hit show Dancing with the Stars. Then, at a party for the cast and crew, a talent agent from Osbrink noticed his incredible dancing abilities and signed him to the agency. And whereas, since then, R.J. has appeared alongside celebrities and guest appeared on popular television shows. Notable accomplishments include hit shows like ABC's Castle, TNT's Major Crimes, Amazon's Hand of God with Ron Perlman, and FX's Baskets opposite Zach Galifianakis. And whereas, R.J. often returns home to South Bend for the holidays and finds inspiration from his family, friends, and peers who recognize all his hard work and dedication. R.J.'s family has been an immense support system, especially his parents, who are extremely proud of everything he has accomplished and happy he is pursuing his dream. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, as follows. The South Bend Common Council proudly recognizes R.J. Walker for his notable accomplishments and wishes him all the best as he continues to pursue and achieve his goals and dreams in the acting industry. This resolution shall be in full force and effect from after its adoption by the Common Council and approval by the mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Walker,
Thank you.
would you or your family like to say anything at this time?
This is right here.
Yep.
First off, what's up? I don't know. Honestly, I'm gonna be real right now, real transparent. And everything I'm saying is real, so it's not like a facade or anything. Like 10 minutes ago, I was getting cold feet, and I didn't even know if I was like the right guy for this. And for the past few months, like I said, I'm being transparent, I doubted myself constantly. And I consistently told myself, I don't know if I'm the right guy. But after hearing Regina speak on, or restate what I told her that I went through, and I see my family here, and I look at the news, and I come home once every year, and I still see shootings often. It's kind of humbling to see that I could stand as a beacon of light. And it's not a me thing. I feel like I'm just the vessel for it all. It's not an R.J. Walker thing. That's just a name. But I just feel honored. I'm blessed to see that people like Tim Scott or any of you people would even look at me in this light. I'm a mess. I am. I'm a mess, and I admit it. But I ain't scared to admit it. But I'm just really happy to be here. It's unreal. Everything that's happened is unreal, and I thank everyone. I'm sorry I'm tearing up. It's just the emotions got the best of me. But thank you guys. Just thank you so much.
Name and address, please. Yes.
I'm Joanne Walker. I'm the mother of R.J. Walker from South Bend, Indiana. We are humble and so very thankful for this opportunity to be here. He gets his tears from me, and I am just so blessed to be among so many people here to recognize our son and the community. We thank you for acknowledging him. And it's just a blessing to see where he started from and where he can go from here. We never tried to turn him away from Indiana. We wanted him to pursue his dream, and so he is and is doing so very well, and we are thankful for that. God bless you.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna cry. My name is Sarita Walker. I'm his little sister. I just wanted to say that when he said that he wasn't sure if he was the right guy, I knew he was the right guy. Like, ever since I was a little kid, I've always, like, watched him. Even if it was, like, small stuff, he was really persistent. He would keep trying. He wanted to do a photo shoot doing a handstand so bad that he used to always do a handstand in the living room and almost knock the TV off the wall. So I was like, okay, this guy's either crazy or he has a really hard work ethic. So that kind of drove me to be more of a hard worker. So I'm thankful for him, because me seeing him every day work harder and harder at whatever it was, it made me a better person. So I just wanted to say
Thank you. Sir?
My name is Randall Walker Sr., and I'm very proud of my son. It's hard to explain how proud I am of him. I've seen him since birth, and I've seen his development. I've seen how far he has come. And I don't have words to explain how awesome he is. You just don't know it yet. But he's very awesome. He's kind of a person that, always striving to reach his goals, and I'm very proud of him, and I want to make sure he knows that. And I think everybody that kind of out loudly says that we're proud of him. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, anyone from the public would like to come and speak, please come to the microphone in favor of this resolution.
Hello, my name is Samuel Brown. I'm a community activist. I live at 222 East Navarre Street in the city of South Bend. I haven't met the gentleman before, but I was very touched by some of the things that he said. And sometimes you question things in your life. I wanted to be in the NBA. I had the talent to play basketball. I was very good at what I did. Then sometimes you got to fall to your knees and ask God, why did you choose for me to go this route? And that's something that in your spiritual life, you have to ask God, is this what you want me to do? And I'm quite sure with the blessings He has given you and what He has took you through, He's preparing you for this. So I hope you keep the work up and just go with the light of God. God will protect you. So I hope this resolution passes.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none. Anyone? Whoa, there we go. A little quick on the draw.
Jonathan Jones, South Bend, Indiana. I used to work at, Bethel College and IUSB, and so I've known RJ for some time now, and I always thought that he was a great light, a great person. I actually hired him to be in a mentoring program of mine, and he always brought a lot of just excitement to anything that we did. And so when we talked during advising times, and he told me he was going to be going out to LA, I mean, I knew that he'd do well, and so I'm very proud of him, and I'm glad to see that you guys are bringing acknowledgement to him today, and so I fully support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll turn to the people wishing to speak against this resolution. Seeing none, we'll turn it back to council for comments. Mr. Kelly, would you please start?
Congratulations on all your success. The business you're in takes an enormous amount of heart and perseverance. So the work ethic your sister so sweetly spoke of is clearly true. So congratulations on all your success. As you continue to build your success, please continue to come back to South Bend and share it with the young people in our community.
Very well said. Congratulations. Such a young man and so much success already. Just certain the best is yet to be, and all the possibilities ahead of you, and welcome you back as often, as frequent as you can, because you are a beacon of hope here tonight, but going forward. So thank you. Shine that light.
RJ, congratulations on your success. Continue working hard to make yourself proud, and you'll make everyone around you proud. It'll just work that way.
Thank you.
Vice President Davis.
It's amazing. If you had had the money to come home, you may have come home, but it was a blessing that you didn't have the money to come home, and it forced you to use all your creative talents to stay out there and move forward. And so, God answers our ways in many different ways. Even when He told you no, it became your way to expand your mind in ways that you never dreamed of. And so I'm very thankful for that, and I'm proud of you. I want you to keep on going and make us all proud.
Thank you for all you've done for the city of South Bend. Congratulations on your achievements, and congratulations to the parents as well for providing the kind of environment and the child rearing that allowed him to realize his potential. So thank you very much.
Congratulations. Looking forward to watching you in acting roles in the future.
Okay, RJ, you are the right person. I think that's important for you to continue to say that to yourself, to reaffirm when you have those moments of doubt or any time of uncertainty. Pull out the resolution and read that resolution. Place it where you can see it on a daily basis, because that resolution just reflects some of the accomplishments that you've made today, and there's many more to come. And so never, ever say that, am I the right person? You are the right person, and that's why we're recognizing you and your accomplishments today, and I can't wait to see you on the big screen, bigger than what you have experienced so far. So again, congratulations.
Mr. Walker, what a beautiful family. And we know what it takes to bring up such great kids. So thank you so much for what you do. What you said touched me because many don't know I'm an artist as well, different medium. But what you said is absolutely true, because sometimes you have to step back, go to 10,000 feet and see everything that you're doing. But I know what it's like. You put yourself out there in your art form, and the whole world gets to see it, scrutinize it, do whatever. And you, probably more than anything, artists have self-doubt on what they're doing. Are they doing the right thing? And it's never good enough, which is awesome, because that's a work ethic to keep striving to do what you do, because you absolutely love what you do. It's almost like you couldn't breathe without doing it. And that's what I got out of what you said to me. So keep doing it, because you're such a great example to not only us, but everybody within the city and everywhere between here and LA and all over. So I've seen you on TV. I've seen you in the commercial. I love that commercial, by the way. It's just fascinating. But it's good that you're humble like that. And it's good that everybody here sees what you're doing. The reason I asked name and address is because this goes in the permanent record for the city. 200 years from now, when you've won like 20 Emmys and, a couple Oscars, people can come back and see this historic record. So even your sister is part of the historic record now. You are embedded into South Bend, and we're thankful that you and your family are part of our lives. So thank you so much. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to that, but...
I'm sorry.
Mom, did you have something you wanted to share or say? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oh,
What were you going to say?
I brought this because I just wanted to shout out the Boys and Girls Club. I don't know if anyone here is from the Boys and Girls Club of Central County. As it says right here, I doubt you guys can see it because it's small print. I started going there in 1998, and it, in a way, helped my parents raise me. I learned everything there, like every sport you could think of. We played dodgeball to football to basketball, everything. And it's just a great thing for the community to have. So I just wanted to, pay some homage to them.
All right.
Really quick.
Thank you.
The motion to adopt by acclamation.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Proud of you, man.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll give you an honor.
Thank you so much.
Hey, come in, grab brother. Good job. Take picture. Regina. No, take the picture of everybody. Please. I know, it's hard. My mama told me that everything you do, take a picture. Yeah. So many things I when I would call her about becoming a victim, she said, boy, did you take a picture? No, no. All right.
You're good. It's down there in the front. Right on the step. Right on the step. We're going to photo on it.
Go out and take experience with them and go back and
No, you're good.
or you go back and take pictures.
Absolutely.
She even got on Facebook before she went on. That's another
please. Don't appreciate it. Calm down. You saw someone there.
What's it like living without the internet?
That's all right. I just get photos of your mom through the mail.
Very funny.
Photos of your mom through the mail.
But they come to understand.
Things people do when they're 6'5".
Okay, humble. Very humble.
Thank you. Okay, now back to business. Report from city offices. We do not have a report from city offices today. The city is represented by James Mueller, Susanna Fritzberg. I'll entertain a motion to rise and join the committee of the whole.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
The Committee of the Whole is now in session. This is the portion of the council meeting where the full council meets as a committee. During each ordinance, the public will have an opportunity to comment, except for those bills that have been continued in the council portion only. For public comment, you are welcome to speak for 5 minutes, either in favor or against, on either issue. With that, would the city clerk please read Bill 7316?
7316, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending Chapter 2, Article 14 of the South Bend Municipal Code to establish various new funds. Local Road and Bridge Matching Fund, $265. Equipment Vehicle Leasing Fund, $750. Park Bonds Capital Fund, $751. South Bend Redevelopment Authority Fund, $752. Smart Streets Bond Capital Fund, $753. Industrial Revolving Fund, $754. South Bend Building Corporation Fund, $755. Smart Streets Debt Service Fund, $756. Parks Bond Debt Service Fund, $757. And the Erskine Village Debt Service Fund, $758. And changing the name of Fund 279 to the IT Innovation/311 Call Center.
Is there a committee report?
Yes, there is. The Personnel and Finance Committee held a committee meeting and public hearing on Bill 73-16. We send this bill to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Presenter, please. State your name and address.
John Murphy, City Controller, with offices on the 12th floor of this building. This ordinance establishes 11 new funds for the city. As you know, during the budget process, we talked about 9 new funds regarding trustee accounts that we always included in our audit report and have always been audited and accounted for properly, but they never were fully integrated into our accounting system or our budgeting, so that's what we're doing with those 9 funds. In addition, the state of Indiana requires a new fund for any government applying for the Indian Community Crossings Grant Program. It's a Fund 265. So if we receive that grant proceeds, we'll deposit it in that fund, and that's where we'll spend it. We'll have an appropriation in the first quarter, likely, to clean up that fund. And then finally, the 311 Call Center Fund, which we had in place for 2016, has been revised in its name to kind of fully recognize the new integrated IT innovation 311 Call Center activities. So all of those activities are in one fund. As discussed in committee, there's separate divisions with each fund, so you kind of keep track of the costs of each division of the fund. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions from council?
Seeing none, we'll move to the public portion. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor? Anyone from the public wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing no one, back to the council. What's your pleasure?
I move that,
Move for favorable, 7316 goes to full council, favorable recommendation.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion carries. City Clerk Fowler, would you please read 7416?
7416, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, appropriating additional funds for certain departmental and enterprise operations in 2016 of $220,000 from the Consolidated Building Fund, number 600, $120,000 from the Consolidated Waste Fund, number 610, $5,000 from the Waterworks Customer Deposit Fund, number 624, $4,000 from the Waterworks Sinking Fund, 625, $5,000 from the Waterworks Bond Reserve Fund, 626, $11,000 from the Waterworks Debt Service OM Fund, 629, $45,000 from the Sewer Insurance Fund, 640, $22,000 from the Sewer Works OM Reserve Fund, 643, $5 from the 2005 Sewer Bond Issuance Fund, 666, and $346,506 from the Century Center Fund, 670.
Thank you. Is there a committee report?
yes, there is. Bill 74-16 was heard this afternoon in terms of public Personnel and Finance Committee. We held a committee meeting, public hearing on this bill. We send this bill to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Presenter, please state your name and address.
John Murphy, City Controller, with offices on the 12th floor. As you know, it's been our practice to amend the budget quarterly, so this is the final amendment for the year. We went through the list of enterprise fund amendments earlier in committee, so I won't repeat everything here, but several of these are small. Those relate to earning interest in a fund, and then which has been a little bit higher than in the prior year, and then transferring it to additional funds. The Century Center appropriation is for more activity. Both expenditures and revenue are higher this year than originally budgeted. So we're pleased with that. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Yes, in terms of the issue with the police, that's another one coming up?
That's coming up. I think that's probably in the Civil City appropriation.
That's the next one. That's right.
Seeing no other questions, we'll move to the public portion. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor? Anyone from the public wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, back to the council. What's your pleasure?
I move for favorable recommendation to full council.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion carries. City Clerk, would you please read 7516?
7516, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana for budget transfers for various departments within the City of South Bend, Indiana for the year of 2016.
Could I entertain a motion to accept the substitute?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Is there a committee report, please?
Yes, the Personnel and Finance Committee held a committee meeting and public hearing on substitute bill 75-16. We send this bill to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Presenter, please state your name and address.
John Murphy, City Controller, with offices on the 12th floor. As you know, we do budget transfers also on a quarterly basis, so this is the final set of transfers for the year. And transfers don't represent new appropriations, rather they represent reclassifications of a budget from maybe one department in the same fund to another department in the same fund, or from an account category like supplies to services within the same fund. So there's 4 pages of those. We try to really take a lot of pride in making sure all of our accounts are in balance at the end of the year. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Seeing none, we'll move to the public portion. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, back to the council. What's your pleasure?
Motion to bring this bill to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. City Clerk Fowler, would you please read 7616?
7616, Public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, appropriating additional funds for certain departmental and city service operations in 2016 of $364,100 from the General Fund 101, $25,000 from the Unsafe Building Fund 219, $25,000 from the Local Roads and Street Fund 251, $150,000 from the Lowit 2016 Special Distribution Fund 257, $10,000 from the Indiana River Rescue Fund 291, $212,542 from the Cops and More Grants Fund 295, $150,000 from the County Option Income Tax Fund 404, and $100,000 from the Parks Non-Reverting Capital Fund number 405.
Is there a committee report, please?
Yes, the Personnel and Finance Committee held a committee meeting and public hearing on Bill 76-16. We send this bill with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Presenter, please state your name and address.
John Murphy, City Controller with offices on the 12th floor. These are the additional appropriations for the civil city funds, which are all the funds other than TIF or enterprise funds, basically. We went through the list at committee this afternoon. Councilmember Davis, the vehicle, the camera appropriation is included. That's under the Cops More grant fund. Ken Glowacki from the police department is here as well to answer any questions that you may have. So going through the list, there's several. One is related to the COET for additional funds for flood repairs, which will be reimbursed through the insurance, which we're in the process of filing a claim for that. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Just a question on that. You probably may, or perhaps, when will all the cars have the new cameras put inside of them?
Why don't I defer to Ken and maybe you have the answer for that.
Ken Glowacki, Director of Finance, South Bend Police Department, 701 West Sample.
Thank you. The question was, when will all the South Bend police cars have the new cameras put inside of them, based on the finances that are here?
I don't know the final date. It's going to be a lengthy process, but as the equipment comes in and we can rotate cars off the street and then to get them replaced, again, I'm not sure exactly, but it'll be, throughout most of next year, this process will be taking place.
Okay. So, okay. And you said there's some new ones coming in?
The $212,000, $172,000 of that deals with buying cameras for new cars just received. The difference is going to be used as part of the money with the general fund to replace cameras in the old cars.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so kindly.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, we'll move to the public portion. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing no one, back to the council. What's your pleasure?
Move to send this bill to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion carries. City Clerk, will you please read 4116?
4116, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance for property located at 401 East Colfax Avenue, 228 and 230 Sycamore Street, and 312 LaSalle Avenue, Councilmanic District Number 4 in the city of South Bend, Indiana.
Just as a reminder, what is the committee report from 4116 from 4 weeks ago?
From 4 weeks ago, Mr. Chair, Zoning Annexation Committee met, and we bring this bill. So this bill was brought to the full council in our meetings here with no recommendation.
Thank you.
And one other thing to add to that tonight, in that we wanted to make sure that we had responses from the mayor, consultant, and to share the rationale, and then many others here tonight will have questions that they will be raising tonight too. We talked about this afternoon. Okay, that's it.
So just for the public, this was continued in the council portion only. which means that the public comment has been closed for this particular bill. What we'll take on now is questions from the council. Those questions are only to be directed towards subject matter experts. We will take 2 questions from each council member first. Following those questions, we will again go down the line. Council members, again, can ask questions of any subject matter expert without limitation, but 2 questions per round, keeping with Robert's Rules of Order. Following questions, we will go down the line. Council members will have an opportunity to make comments. Please wait until every council member has had the opportunity to make a comment before making a motion. With that, we will open...
Point of order before we can... Sure. Later this, or about the end of our committee meetings this afternoon, we did receive a letter from the mayor's. Can we make it from the mayor's office? Can we make that a part of the record before we continue?
Sure, absolutely. Do we need a motion?
Do we need a motion and then read it into the record, or we make it a matter of the record?
What I'd rather do with that, because one of my questions was for the mayor to, since his chief of staff is here or somebody, how do we, this needs to be read publicly, so then we would then be able to ask questions regarding it.
Then I would ask, if this is all right, then I would ask that the letter that we received dated December 12, 2016, be read into the record as a matter of the record going forward. So the information is correct.
Okay. Can't you read it to the record? Did everybody read it?
I guess I'd ask the clerk to read it.
Is there
I do have a question. Okay. I thought that as we started this portion, that what we were going to ask, which will probably address Dr. Varner's concern that it be read into the record, was that probably maybe 3 weeks ago, a letter was sent to administration as well with community investment. We had asked for a response, and this might be the response. So I was thinking that we would first allow the administration to come forth with their response to those questions that were asked.
And then read it.
Yeah. So that was my understanding. I
That
don't
was
know.
mine too.
I just think it needs to be a part of the record
It will be.
whenever it's entered. Okay, that's fine.
I agree.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree too. I think it's important.
Okay, so we will start with 2 questions from each council member. I'll just give a reminder, please limit your questions to 2 questions, not one very long question with maybe 17 different questions within one question. So, again, we will get around to everyone again. So please keep it to just 2 questions initially, and then as we move on, there will be no limitation on the number of questions as we go forward. But for the first round, we'll just have 2 questions. So, Councilwoman Preston, is it okay if we start with you?
I will ask my question second round. How's that?
That's okay.
If they have not been answered.
Sure. Councilmember Kelly?
Most of them defer right now.
Okay. Councilmember Brode?
Yes, if Rob Bartles, who's party to this agreement, a couple questions with regard to his commitments, please.
Good evening, Rob Bartles, 760 West Cotter, South Bend, Indiana.
Thank you, Mr. Bartles. What is your commitment with regard to this project in terms of your lease agreement going forward, and an understanding of the market feasibility and readiness for you to enter, the market here in South Bend, in downtown South Bend?
We do not have a signed lease as of yet because we do not have all of the fundamentals done, which would require, a positive vote from this group that will allow us to then understand fully the economics and the realities of the situation and the circumstance. Secondly, the market feasibility side of things is pretty simple. We've done a great deal of, we've been here for 70 years. We know the town, A. B, we have a great deal of, what you call it, big data, but tells us who's where and what demographic trends are happening. And the tricky part about a downtown location for us is it requires greater population density than we currently have. And so the confluence of this project answers parking, it answers density, and it answers momentum in terms of the market trends over time.
And then if I might follow up, with regard to an urban market footprint versus either the other projects that you're involved in with regional cities or existing markets? How will this market differ in terms of size, in terms of square footage required, and layout in any way?
Okay, so this is a pretty radical departure for us. We're involved in 2 projects that are like this. One in downtown Elkhart, where we do not have a signed lease either, working through the process in a similar fashion to this one. But we did reconfigure a save-a-lot on the south side of Goshen, which is about a 25,000 square foot footprint. That would be a similar size to this, although very differently configured. And we as an organization are learning how to be small again. So there's a great deal of learning that's going on right now that is concurrent. We're working, we just opened a convenience store on the west side of town, and we're working with a couple other projects that can get us into a more niche kind of environment. It's pretty simple. When you shrink a business model like this down to this degree, you have to be very careful with resources, and our industry is something less than 2% net profit before taxes since the recession. That has not changed, and so that means we have to be careful stewards of what we're doing, but we also understand how to adapt, and we're learning a great deal from the things that we're doing.
Thank you.
Councilmember Barnett? My question would be for our council attorney, and I say to put her on the spot, but with regards to the way this has played out, if we were to take action tonight favorably with regards to the proposal that's before us, the proposal regarding the modification to the PUD to allow the height of 175 feet, if that is done, the planning can go forward, or the project can go forward, or is proposed to go forward without any other city involvement, is my understanding. And maybe Mr. Matthews will have to jump in to clarify that. If we, in any way, shape, or form, modify the proposal, does that not then make it something like an offer and counteroffer circumstance whereby, as modified, it then goes back to negotiations?
If it's modified and the modification is accepted, it's in writing. But it becomes
a final,
becomes part of
but it could also lead to an offer counteroffer circumstance, or not.
Or not.
Depending on how it's written.
Depends on how it's written.
Okay.
If it's written, there's a commitment, and the commitment's made, and that commitment is adopted as a substitute for
Okay.
Motion.
I guess what I would like to find is a resolution this evening, if we can, not a continuation of the continuation of the continuation. So would you help us if we need specific language to accomplish that? If we can, okay.
Yes, I can, yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Would first like to ask Marcel from the Board of Zoning Appeals. Some on the council and other individuals have argued that the BZA is the appropriate body to hear a request like this. Why, in your opinion, is the council the appropriate body to hear an opinion like this, or to hear a consideration like this?
Sure. Under Indiana law, you are the zoning authority for the city of South Bend. The BZA is a board that's put together with appointees from the city of Mishawaka, the county, and the city of South Bend. If all of your zoning appeals were to run, or all your zoning requests like this were to run through the BZA, you would essentially be giving veto power to the county and the city of Mishawaka, which is obviously not something you want. The way the system is currently set up, like the Niles Ave project that was done a few years ago, if something runs through the BZA and gets denied, it comes to you and you can overrule the denial. You are the ultimate zoning authority. You've got the ability to go forward and improve PUDs. Projects of this magnitude, this scale, are what the PUD statute was intended for when it was written by the state, and that is why we are here today.
Thank you.
Can you call that? Name and address.
Oh yeah, your name and address, please.
Marcel Levin, 4100 Parkway, Mishawaka.
So you're welcome to follow up during the next round.
So then he has to come back up again?
Yes. Next question is for Mr. Matthews. if this successfully passes today, talk about your process moving forward, and is there a commitment to attempting to acquire other portions of the parcel to work with the neighbors to potentially reduce the overall height? Talk to that from our previous discussions, what your commitments might be moving forward in working with neighbors as well as adjacent property owners.
So Dave Matthews, 215 East Colfax Avenue, downtown South Bend. We do the development we do at Matthews LLC because we love South Bend. We're trying to help make this city better. We're trying to do what's right for the neighborhood. This is our home. This is where we care about. And I think if you look at our past buildings, the past buildings we've built show that we care about the neighborhood. We care about the feel of the blocks and the pedestrian friendliness of the site. There's requests from some of the neighbors to make the building shorter. We've worked with experts hired by the city from Washington, D.C. We have in-house designers. We have consultants that we use outside of our company to try and figure out the best way to move forward. But we have to design within the land we own. Now, there's discussions about me buying more property on the block. It hasn't happened yet. If it does happen, then yeah, I'm definitely willing to talk and say, hey, come back and revisit the design of this side and say, well, we don't have to build it so tall. We can build, next door. And if I do buy that land, I'm happy to work with the city and say, hey, this additional parcel is in play. Here's what we're thinking instead. What do you guys think? How can we move forward? But there's a lot of uncertainty there as well. One of the entities it seems like everyone knows we're looking at buying the AEP substation. We've had several conversations for the past 2 years. We don't have an agreement. They won't give us an agreement. And even if they gave us a timeline, honestly, it's American Electric Power. How good is their timeline? But we want to do what's right for the neighborhood. We want to do what's best. And if they came back and said, hey, we're ready to go, and if some of the other parcel owners on the block said, hey, here you go, Dave, we're happy to sell it at a reasonable price, then I definitely could entertain making the building shorter and reconfiguring it. And then because it's a PUD, I'd probably have to come back through this process for a significant change and talk to you guys anyway. But we'd work with planners, we'd work with community investment and say, here's what we're thinking, what do you guys want to see? But we want to do what's right for the neighborhood, what's right for the city. I live a few blocks away. I walked here tonight. This is our neighborhood. We care.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
Yes, I'd like to call the Chief of Staff for it, please. And I went to get to there. Good evening, Dr. Mueller.
Good evening, Councilman Davis.
Thank you.
James Mueller, 14th, with office on 14th floor of this building.
That's true. Thank you. My question was, would you please read the letter from Mayor Pete Buttigieg that was given to us today on December the 12th, 2016? That's my first question.
Okay, sure. Dear council members, over the past several months, my administration has been in active discussions regarding the proposed development of the Commerce Center site. From the start of the process, I've emphasized that the city supports the goals of this project, provided it is done in a way that can garner broad support across development and neighborhood stakeholders. After conversations with many of you and with my staff, I firmly believe there would be widespread support for a proposed building height that was reduced from 12 floors to 9 floors, or 162 feet to 127 feet. My staff and I enthusiastically support this compromise approach. In order to make it work financially, our city team has offered an aggressive tax abatement of 95% over 10 years, worth roughly $6 million, or 20% of the proposed project cost. This incentive from the city would satisfy our matching requirements for the regional cities and would be in addition to the $4.9 million grant from the state. The city also offered $1.5 million of TIF to expand public space and purchase property along the East Race Waterway. Unfortunately, we have not been able to come to terms with the developer of this option. Another option is to reduce the building height to 11 stories or 151 feet, consistent with the maximum height ordinarily allowed in the rest of the central business district. While less attractive than the 9-floor alternative, if council endorses this approach, the administration would be prepared to support it. Given the tight timeline associated with the $4.9 million Regional Cities Grant from the state, I respectfully request that the council support the administration's negotiating team and our effort to arrive at a compromise. The administration is always prepared to work with the developer on ways to make sure our city does not miss out on this great investment in downtown. Sincerely, Pete Buttigieg.
Thank you. Also, could you share a summary of, you had a consultant, could you share us the name of that consultant, and that was on this step, and then the summary of the consultant's recommendation regarding this whole matter?
Sure, I'll speak briefly, and then I'll call up Jiten, who led that consulting work. But it's the consultant, Mr. Matthews, referenced earlier from D.C., Tortigalis. And I think there were two components to this study. One was thinking about the land, the block as a whole, if Mr. Matthews were able to acquire a P site or part of the wireless. But he doesn't own those today, so that's kind of looking forward to if this were possible, so hypothetical. Tortigalis looked at the existing land that Mr. Matthews owned and basically said, I don't know what else there wasn't a lot of options, but I'll bring Jiten to speak further to the conclusions.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jiten Kane, Deputy Public Works Director, offices on the 13th floor of this building. I was tasked with trying to find a reasonable compromise to the proposal offered by the developer. We consulted with Tortigalis and Partners, urban design firm that has done work in South Bend in the past. The West Side Main Streets plan was developed by Tortigalis. They're known for not only doing design and planning work, but also for building projects. They're actively involved in a lot of residential mixed-use projects. So we worked with them over the last few days. They understood the program. They had conversations with the developer. And their sort of big or key suggestion was to balance the program onto the entire site. Given the constraints of the project, they felt the best approach would be to try and look a little bit more horizontally as opposed to vertically. They suggested breaking the project into 3 different buildings, with the project being phased in. The first couple of buildings could be on LaSalle, and the second phase would be then on Colfax. Now, the proposal they offered also reduced the height to about 130 feet or 127. They offered options where certain buildings could be taller than others, so you had variation in height. And much of the proposal seemed to be heading in the direction of the compromise that we were seeking, except the challenge was site control. The proposal was contingent on having site control of the Fire Arts building and the AP substation to make that entire program happen, which the developer is proposing. And we engaged with AP in conversation. They have a mandate by their governing body to overhaul that substation, but that deadline is middle of the year in 2019. And the developer was seeking site control earliest by next year. So AP was willing to offer a letter of intent saying we intend to work with the developer on this, however, could not reach or could not come to a decision on having site control by next year. I think that seemed to be the sticking issue. So we tried to work on a compromise. It's the proposal offered seemed unfeasible in the end.
Thank you. Okay. Councilmember Bordy?
I'll defer.
Councilmember Scott?
If I understand correctly, and this is probably for Mr. Matthews and Mr. Mulder, if I'm looking at the options that were presented to us by Mr. Matthews, there is an option B, which is 11 stories, where zero money is up front, or zero money is put in by the city, versus, according to the letter, 9 stories, minimum 4.1 million from the city. So If I'm looking at this correctly, according to the letter, it's an option that the mayor has put on the table. Does this work for both the city and for the developer? And I'll start with the developer.
For which option?
Option B looks like 11 stories, zero money in from the city.
That option still works for us, yes.
Mr. Mueller?
I didn't hear that.
He said yes.
It is not our first preference, but it does work for the city, and there is no other option on Mr. Matthews' sheet that works for the city financially.
Because the upfront money from the city.
Because the upfront money from the city, correct.
Okay. One more question?
Just for the record, real quick on that, I don't think people have that letter that they have, so is there any way you
It's the letter that Mr. Mueller just read. Or are you talking about the options?
The one we got.
I know we got it, but I'm talking about the general public doesn't have it.
Well, Mr. Mueller just read it.
Oh, Mr. Matthews' option.
No.
My
Mr. Matthews
option might
option.
be on the Dropbox from the city clerk's office. I think they put one up this morning.
It is.
Yes.
It is up
Yep.
at...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to clarify,
Could you refer
what
to that?
Vice President Davis is saying is, Mr. Matthews has presented to the council and the city 4 different options that were probably workable within the numbers. Again, he's a private developer bringing forth what was originally the 12-story building. These are options ranging from 12 stories down to 4 stories. With various dollar amounts. I could elaborate, but it is out on the public website, so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Mr. Bartles, one question for you quickly. Between the pharmacy and the grocery store, how many jobs are you thinking this might bring to this area? I hate to do this, try to lump it all in one, but within the whole entire building, so maybe it's a Mr. Matthews Bartles type question. How many jobs will this building bring to the city?
Our part of it is something in the neighborhood, this is a range, 30, well, let me call it 40 plus or minus 10.
Okay.
We're not sure. So 30 to 50, but depends on full-time, part-time, depends on how robustly things go.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
We will probably have somewhere around 3 to 7 full-time equivalents added for this building for both leasing management and property management.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
This goes to Mr. Matthews and probably James, you may want to be standing close by. I want to make sure, in terms of the December 12th letter that we received from the mayor, and the administration had developed or offered 2 options, A and B. Of these options, none of them will work for you. Is that what you're saying? What we have before us, that James just read.
He talked about 2 different options.
2 different options.
One
And could you
was-
maybe...
One was option D, as in David.
Well, I'm looking at the letter that we have.
Right. One option,
Mhm.
the first option, their preference,
Mhm.
was my option D from the 5 different proposals, which was a 127-foot tall building at the curb. But we can't pay for the garage with only 140-some units. And so the city offered $1.5 million to buy some land and help pay for the garage, but our deficit was $4.7 million, so the 1.5 didn't get us there. So that option wouldn't work financially, but then their second one was my option B, which was reducing the height to 11 stories instead of 12, and that would still give us enough money with the tax payment to pay for the garage.
And it reducing it from 12 to 1, and this is a question, 11 to 12 to 1. The question that I would like to ask you, in light of what you've heard, and the height being one of the major concerns, by reducing it by 1 story, what impact would that have on you financially? And then the impact based on what you've heard so far.
It saves us $5 million. We spend $5 million less. It costs us 24 apartments. So It's probably costing us $500,000 to $600,000 a year in revenue, and then it probably saves us $80,000 a year in property taxes that we would not have to pay because our building would be cheaper.
I only have 2 questions, I'll come back around.
Thank you. Okay, we'll circle back. Councilmember
May I
Preston?
actually make a motion that we change this format of questioning and somehow make this flow a little bit smoother and faster? The 2 questions is really breaking things up quite a bit in terms of our ability to follow up with questions and give an expert. And I think that's, in terms of continuity of the questions and trying to get at issues about cost or about the different options or whether these, and I just want to ask if any other council members would support that motion to change the formatting of these questions from the limit of 2.
How would
and then moving on.
How would it work? Sure. Well, how about this? If this works for all council members, how about Regina starts, you ask a question to a certain subject matter expert, you ask as many questions as you'd like. When you're done asking questions, if any other council member has a question for that subject matter expert at that time, we can go down the line and you can ask as many questions of that person as you'd like. Does that sound like a good way to go?
That sounds beautiful.
Okay. Councilmember Preston, you start, and then again, you ask as many questions of a single subject matter expert, and we'll follow with everyone else asking questions as they need.
Okay. I guess mine would be for Dave Matthews. You had mentioned, my notes, that you'd be willing to work with neighbors, or that you even have already been working with neighbors. And one of the big issues was that neighbors were concerned about the height. It's my understanding that back in several months ago, there was a recommendation by the Area Plan Commission, I think, that you look at possibly going back to that East Bank plan. I'm saying this because you and I have had this conversation too, is that I have a lot of concerns about, I'm not trying to make a statement, but just so you understand the context, I have concerns about making a decision that goes so far outside a plan that was created by people in the community. The issue of, business plans, in my mind, should not trump or supersede neighborhood plans. Can you clarify for me, maybe again, what was your reasoning behind not pursuing that line per the recommendation? Like that line of well, let's go back, let's talk to neighbors, let's get some other consensus at that time.
So as a private developer, we met with the neighborhood organization for this area, the Howard Park Neighborhood Organization. We presented, we had dialogue. They gave a letter of support. We met with neighbors from the townhomes and row houses that have gone up. So we worked with the homeowners association of the new developments. We worked with the neighborhood organization for the entire neighborhood and had a lot of conversation and dialogue as we were presenting and working through the design process to update the East Bank plan. I don't think as a private developer I can do that. I think that has to come from the city, probably via area plan or Department of Community Investment. So they have to call to do a new study. I mean, I'll be there, and I'm sure a lot of the neighbors will be there too. But from a private developer standpoint, I think we went above and beyond and met with as many neighbors in the 9 blocks of the East Bank that we could.
Okay. Any further questions from Mr. Matthews?
Not this time.
Okay. Okay.
So, Mr. Matthews, at the very start of this process, pursuant to the Plan Unit Development District ordinance that was passed by this council in 2015, you would have had to, or could you address the areas of, there's 2 criterias related as whether, that gets to whether or not this is the type of petition that we should be seeing as a council. And one is, and the most significant one is, Section 3, or A3, and it says the PUD district is not intended for the developments, for development seeking relief from development standards within a district in which the use is permitted. Is the height that you're requesting, is that not a development standard for this district that you're trying to build in?
The intent of the PUD is that they don't want somebody using the PUD to, let's say, get to do a variance process instead of going through the ABZA. And so if we were just talking about height and nothing else, then yes, that would be wrong. But we're not talking about just height. We have a site plan, we have a mixed-use building, we have group residencies, that's an additional use that there's now a path that somebody could go through the ABZA to get a group residency, but when we did the initial planning for this site, you could not have 3 people living together in a 3-bedroom apartment. There was no way to make it happen in the central business district. We knew that, hey, down the road, the city council might make a path for people to have 2 roommates, 3 roommates in the downtown, but when we were doing our planning, when we submitted the application, that was talk, and there was dialogue going on, but no one had talked to me about it. I know that was a piece of legislation you actually worked on, but again, nobody talked to me. We just heard rumors that this was going to happen eventually. So when we did the application, the only option we had was to do a planned unit development and keep a lot of the stuff intact in the central business district, or do a mixed-use development, which has much more restrictive heights and, I mean, it's really not designed to be compatible with the heart of the central business district. And so it made more sense for us to do the PUD. And honestly, like, Eddy Street Commons is a PUD. Like, PUDs give the council a lot more information and a lot more control about what's going to happen. And so for a $50 million development, it seemed like the right path was to come to the city council and say, here's our cards, here's what we're thinking of doing, here's what it's going to look like, here's the site layout, what do you think? And because height was a portion, was changing, then that gets thrown into whether or not you guys approve the PUD.
So if I could follow up on that. At the time that you presented this petition in the initial planning meeting with the area plan staff, really all of your uses that you're seeking, that you sought then or that you're seeking now, did exist in the mixed use by rezoning this to a mixed use district. Is that true?
They existed in mixed use. They existed in the group residency existed in mixed use.
And so why did you not pursue that route, please?
It also existed in single family. It also existed in multifamily. There's other districts that would have allowed group residency. It's our choice to pick what makes the best, most sense for what we're applying for. And for us, doing a PUD that's very similar to the central business district made more sense than doing a mixed-use zoning and then saying, here's all the variances from mixed-use to make it more like the central business district. Either route would have been okay, but it seemed like the PUD was the right way to go, and it gives the city council more discretion and more influence on the rezoning process. And this is a big project. I think you guys deserve to have more influence and more say in if this goes forward, and especially in hindsight, because the height issue became such a topic of conversation. I'm glad we went this route.
But isn't that exactly the loophole, if you would, that when the council had passed your previous project at Jefferson and Niles, first that went through the BZA and was denied, and then you brought it forth to the council to make that decision. So, I'm sorry, you brought it by way of a PUD request. So, and then after that process, and it was approved by council, there was an intentional move by the council to make this planned unit development the exception rather than the rule going forward, and it specifically listed two criteria with the help of the area plan staff. Embedded two criteria, and one is, and the PUD district is not intended for development seeking relief from development standards within a district in which the use is permitted. And then the PUD district is not intended for the development of residential subdivisions, permitted uses, or special exception uses which are provided for within any district of this ordinance. So it seems to me that we're kind of back again, that you are back again, are you not back again asking for a similar approval from us as a council, having already closed this as an option for you? In other words, I'm trying to get at the validity of this as a PUD request.
So I just want to make sure I understand. Is the question, is this a valid PUD request?
Yes.
Great. Yes, it is.
And how so, please?
And maybe I can bring in the attorney who's a state rep who helps draft legislation. Brian, could you help answer this question for me? Because, if you're asking is it legally a request, I think it is. It made it through the process thus far, but Brian can probably...
Please state your name and address.
Ryan Dvorak, 215 West North Shore Drive, South Bend. I represent Dave Matthews on various matters. We've worked on PUD proposals, all sorts of building projects around town. We've had a discussion, I guess, with some of the planning people about whether or not, when, I guess, a PUD application is appropriate. And last year, in 15, it was August, I think, of 2015, the ordinance was updated, and it included this, the intent section that Councilwoman Broden read, and it talks about what the intent is. I think, as Mr. Matthews mentioned, his intent was not to circumvent one of the requirements in the zoning law. His intent is to present a planned unit development. As a larger project, I think as Councilmember Broden mentioned, we talked about an exceptional type of project. This is a $50 million mixed-use, 240 residential units on top of a grocery store, pharmacy, along the East Race in the Central Business District, and with the parking garage. It is not a normal project. It's going to take a long time to construct. It's going to take a lot of money to pull together, and it will have a major impact in the town. That is the reason the state adopted the planned unit development statute to begin with, is to try to find an easier way to do the planning for these types of major projects. We have PUDs in place, for example, the Renaissance District over in the Studebaker building. Mariplex is a PUD. Eddy Street Commons is a PUD. They could have been zoned in other ways as well. The PUD statute and the ordinance that the city adopted as well makes it an easier process, both for the developer, so they can make sure they have all of their components in a line when they're going to get their financing done and when they're lining up contractors, but really also for the city. On a major complex project like this, I think it's in the city's interest to basically have all these details spelled out ahead of time. The PUD gives you as the council the ability to say, we want to know how every single component of this project is going to work, and that's how the PUD statute and the ordinance actually is created. So I don't think that at all violates the intent clause of the PUD ordinance, because I don't think the intent behind applying for it as a PUD was to circumvent any of their zoning regulation. Does that answer the question?
Sure.
Okay.
What if we have a question for him?
Yeah, we can follow up.
Let's come down. We'll continue going down the line, then we'll circle back to you. Do you have any follow-up questions, Councilmember Broden?
I do.
So let's distinguish the Eddy Street Commons, if we would. That is a mix of all kinds of different uses and large swath of land, and it preceded the 2015 amendment,
Sure.
if I'm correct.
Right.
Okay. So, and then with regard to the Renaissance District, that district has, I'm sorry, I can't remember my notes on that. So really, again, it's trying to get to whether this is appropriate post the 2015 amendments that this council passed 9-0.
Yeah.
That basically, aimed at not, great. To me, this really looks like, and the petitioner has said repeatedly, and of course, everybody is excited about the development. I mean, the big question here is the height, and it continues to be, morphed in all kinds of different proposals. So it seems to me that, going to, I guess I'm just wondering why this did not go the route of BZA, because to me, that should have been the route for this particular...
I guess the clarification you're trying to see, you sort of think this might, your question is whether or not this is prohibited under the city ordinance on planned unit developments?
Yes.
Based on the intent clause of the ordinance?
Or the criteria, the intent, it's not, intent.
And this is sort of an exercise in statutory construction, I guess, so we can sort of look at this. I mean, subsection A of Article 5, the Planned Unit Development District, goes to intent. It has three parts. The first one talks about what the district is intended to do. Talk about establishing compatible and efficient mix of land uses and open space, compatibility with comprehensive plan, establishing a creative approach in building design for architectural compatibility, flexibility and incentives for development, and any individual land or combination of land uses otherwise not specified elsewhere in the ordinance. So that's the intent, and then it has two sort of conditions on that. One, it's not intended for residential subdivisions, and then permitted uses, special exception uses. And then the third one is, the PUD district is not intended for development seeking relief from development standards within a district in which the use is permitted. So that's the intent of the statute. And that's something we sort of, that doesn't actually, that describes what the intent of it is, but it actually doesn't carry any force of law. Because what the statute actually does is described in the next section, B, permitted uses and development standards. And then it talks about what the actual permitted uses are under a PUD application. None of which prohibit this application from going through. So, I guess my response is, number one, I don't think the ordinance prohibits this application in any way. I mean, that was never brought up. I went through, before this meeting, I went through all the meeting minutes at every step in the process, and no one ever said this is an illegal application under the PUD's ordinance. So that's a new and novel argument that I don't think makes sense, because, number one, the intent section of the ordinance doesn't apply or carry any sort of force of law, and it's not prohibited under the permitted uses. So I guess that's my argument. Does that make sense?
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Happy to answer any other questions.
Okay. Just for the sake of clarification, while it says may not be intended, it doesn't say it's forbidden to use this.
Right. It doesn't say, it actually doesn't say it may not be intended. It just says this is the intent of the law, or the ordinance.
Right.
And so it says what the ordinance is.
And that was in the explanation of what the...
Right. And then the rest of the ordinance actually spells out how it's applied. And there's nothing in the actual meat of the ordinance that says this would be prohibited at all.
Thank you.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes. You and especially Dave Matthews, your client, has shared that he liked the PUD because of the fact that it allows the council to have more influence. Is that not correct?
Correct.
Okay. What I've shared with Dr. Mueller, if he and I were both going out to get a pizza, he had $20, I have $20, so we want a $40 pizza. Okay?
Right.
He wants black olives, I want mushrooms.
It's getting complicated, but okay.
Black olives and mushrooms. Black olives and mushrooms.
Gotcha.
He has $20. I got $20.
Sounds good so far.
You all good?
Yes.
Okay. We both then recognize that since we both are putting this money in, and we want to influence each other, since we got $20, that the final product would probably either be black olives and mushrooms, or half of it black olive and the other half mushroom. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Now, if he was going to put in all $40, I'm at his mercy. Right?
Correct.
And if I was going to put in all $40, he's at my mercy. Okay?
you want to be very cruel about it. I think most people try to be more lenient.
Got my point. So we really, I hear. So I do appreciate the fact that he has said that he wanted to have the council to have more influence. Okay? Now, it seemed to me, I really want to get at the heart of what did he really expect when he said, I mean, he didn't want to go to mixed use, he didn't want to go to other things, even though, to my understanding, he was advised to do this by, in the testimony through area plan directors. He was advised to go around that. He was told that to hold back because of all the different changes. It was not in terms of any kind of way down the road that we were going to pass this. He was pretty much given the knowledge of everything we were going to do, and it was going to be sponsored. So, therefore, he chose because he said he wanted our influence. Okay? So, I really want to know, what influence did he really want from us? Because when I want to put in my order to you, and I say I want black olives, and you want black olives, and I want mushrooms, we kind of know what that means. I'm influenced you, so I know how it's going to look. But every seemingly suggestion that we have done to lower it, to do this and do that, it was pretty much pushed out. Why is the council getting involved in this? Why is the council getting involved in this? Why we just don't accept all the, here we are. Dave Matthews is doing this, Dave Matthews is doing, when it's clear that he's putting in his money, and we represent the bodies of taxpayers that's putting in money from regional cities and the tax abatement that we're going to do. So therefore, we have equal influence, black olives and mushrooms, because we both are bringing in money for this project. So I really want to get at the heart of what were you and your client thinking when you said you wanted to have the influence of the council. Because it seems that when we have given our influence with what our members have said to us, because we all want this project, let's put it on the table, okay? But we also represent people who have said that we want black olives or mushrooms inside of here, okay? And you seem to want just one side of that. And I want to know, where did you really want us to have our influence?
Great. So if we're talking about pizza toppings.
Pizza toppings. I'm hungry tonight, so, you know.
Yeah, I love pizza. So I think similar to that to our development problem is, let's say we're going to go to pizza.
Okay.
And I got $40 and you got $20.
Okay.
And you say you want mushrooms and I say I want black olives. And you say, great, I don't want to give you my $20. But instead, I'm going to eat this pizza and be strong. I'm going to give you 50 cents every week for the next 5 years. That's a tax abatement. The putting your $20 in to buy the pizza is saying, hey, our East Main plan called for the city to build a garage sometime in the past 8 years on this property. If the garage was built by the city as the plan called for, Dave can build a shorter building. If the city could allocate the funds and build a garage for $12.6 million so I don't have to build it, then I can do a grocery store and pharmacy and do a few floors residential and still have parking for the office people in the commerce center. But the reality of it is when we approached the administration, they said we don't have the money in the TIF. And so if the city doesn't have the money to pay for the garage, we have no deal unless we could figure something out. What I figured out is, okay, if we do a modified tax abatement and we go taller, I can make enough money to cover the city's portion and say, great, I will buy the whole pizza today. You can pay back for your share over the next 10 years.
If the pizza owner accepts...
No, I have the $40.
If the pizza owner accepts this deal of me giving $1 or 50 cents or 5 cents over the next 20 years for me to get this pizza. One place gave me a pizza for free last night. It was real good. I'm on the side. But they accepted that because I stayed in line so long in the snow. That was the deal we had. So whatever the deal that we had that comes up, whether they accept $1 over the next 20 years and they accept your $20 that night, okay, it's still going to allow us to get the pizza. Because without my 20 years of getting that, you would not be able to do this without regional cities money, which started this whole thing, which are public dollars, okay? And without all that, with your own $20, you wouldn't get the pizza, okay? So we have just as much responsibility representing tax dollars, and when it comes down to that, on both sides of this pizza. So it has been portrayed to me that your influence over the black olives is stronger than my influence up here in our house to try to get the mushrooms. And my thing is, I learned in having pizza with my own daughter, getting black olives and mushrooms made it a safe travel, and most people from Pizza Hut or wherever, since I have a lot of pizza places, I wouldn't name anybody else, got home. That's my concern, because when we're giving our influence, there has not been the movement that I expected from the time we started this process back in June, from all sides of it. Because it's almost like, well, your money's up front, your money. So again, just because the influence, I don't see the equal value of the influence. That's my concern.
Just finishing up the pizza analogy.
Please help me.
To begin with, I think Dave's been pretty transparent in what his financial situation is. I mean, I work with a lot of developers, and it's not often that you see someone sort of present an array of a dozen different possibilities with looking at the rate of return and how you can actually make money.
With all due respect, we got that dozen just this weekend too, okay?
Well, okay.
We had 90 days.
Okay, we had 90 days, but go ahead.
Okay, so if we're talking about buying a pizza here, we're in a situation where people have been asking for pizza for a long time.
That's correct.
They really want to eat pizza. People are hungry and they want to eat the pizza.
That's correct.
When somebody shows up at the table and says, I'm going to buy the pizza, and somebody else says, that's fine, I'll pay you back for part of that pizza over the next 5-10 years, that's great. But it doesn't allow anybody to buy the pizza up front. So he's the only guy who can actually pay the bill at the table. That being said, you still have the most influence of all. Council can say, we don't want to do this project. I mean, there's only so many ways you can skin a cat and make money on this. City isn't in the business of building buildings and renting out apartments. It's got to be left to the private sector. We got laid out an array of options to show how somebody can make money off this project on that parking lot as it is now. You can say, we don't want that to happen. That's totally up to you, and he has to go home. We hope that doesn't happen, but make no mistake, you have the biggest say in the end of all this. So we're happy to work on any other ways that we can to make this go forward in a way that actually makes the investors some money, and I'm happy to do whatever else is required. But I don't think anybody's really trying to put one over on anybody.
Well, I did not ask that to say that anybody's trying to put anybody over. I just said because the weight of the influence, because we're running a clock here for our purposes, okay? And the influence to do that has been the attitude, well, if I have the money to upfront it, then since you're going to pay me back, I don't have to worry about it. But the only reason you can say that you have the money up front is because you know that you're getting the money back. If you don't have the money up front, and you know you're not getting back, then you really don't have the money up front. So let's be real with that. I could loan somebody $40, but I know that if they don't give me $20 over time, I already have deducted it out of my account. Okay? But I know if they broke and they're not giving it at all, I really donated my $20 of theirs to that. So your analogy is a little bit different from that standpoint. And so we did commit with us, especially when we had good credit. Okay? So you have to realize that. Therefore, based on that, our influence, the problem I've had with this from day one is the influence has been, well, Dave Matthews. But we all want to eat, like you said, and people have been asking for this pizza. So our influence is just as equal when it comes down to the region city's monies and the tax abatement, that is all businesses coming here to sit back and say, because if we don't give those tax abatements, this project is not going.
Yeah, that's true. And I think as Mr. Bartles has said, I mean, there's realities as to, like, how a grocery store actually gets put in the middle of the downtown. And this has to do with demographics. It has to do with how many people are living there. And the only way you can make a grocery store project work in downtown South Bend is to have population density. And the only way you can have density is to have actual people living in the vicinity of the grocery store. Right now, there's hardly anybody that lives on the East Bank. I mean, there's the Point right across the street. Those are renters. About the only other people in the East Bank are living in places that Dave Matthews built. And to my knowledge, almost all of them have supported this project.
Yeah, so I'm good with that. But again, I'm glad we finally clarified that we all have influence in it. I wish we could have come to more of that action early on.
We humbly beseech your approval.
Thanks. Councilmember Bordy, any questions for Dave and Ryan at this time?
He wants onions.
$40 is
I'll call right now.
Or it's two pizzas. No, go ahead.
Honestly, I don't know where this is going to end up going.
Make sure to question.
I'm getting ready to ask.
Okay.
I'm probably going to defer my question because I'm ready to call for motion.
We still have a lot of questions.
That's fine.
Yep. Any questions?
I just have two more questions, and this is to Mr. Matthews. The question is, from your perspective, the only way that this project, from a developer perspective, can go, that it has to be 11 stories. That's the comment.
It could go shorter,
But
then,
shorter with additional resources.
well, I mean, right, somebody has to pay for it.
Somebody has to
Doesn't have
pay
to
for
be
it.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question I have, can you respond to, there's also been some discussions and questions that the project is in conflict with the city of South Bend design and guidelines in terms of looking at the project, how does it fit into this particular process? And that's the South Bend design and guidelines that were...
Are we talking about the East Bank plan?
East Bank plan is one, but there's also...
There's a downtown design overlay district.
It was passed in 2013. The South Bend Redevelopment Commission adopted in 2013 the City of South Bend Design Guidelines. Are you familiar with that?
So the redevelopment commission has design guidelines.
And then there are guidelines especially for the East Bank as well. It was in 2013 that these guidelines were adopted by the redevelopment. Jiten may can respond to that.
I can just clarify what that is. That was the revision to the Central Business Development Area Plan. We had a current development area plan, which is essentially a policy document for the funding of future TIF projects, and that was updated in 2013. That plan had subsections, so it really looked at the East Bank as one subsection, looked at the West Bank as another subsection, the Monroe Industrial Park as one, and I believe the medical district as one. So they had 4 subsections, and each had certain broad policy guidelines for types of projects that should occur in those areas.
So in terms of the guidelines that were developed or adopted for the East Bank, how does this project fit into those guidelines?
So those guidelines would not have gotten into any details of heights or appearance. They were primarily the types of uses, and so it would have certainly said things like mixed-use development, residential, commercial, and office, high-tech type. So I would think based on those, it would certainly fit. The use would fit the guidelines in the East Bank section.
Thank you.
Councilmember Preston, you had a question?
Yeah. You said that if we were to approve this tonight, I thought I heard someone ask that you would be willing to continue to pursue things like that, additional land acquisition, and that could help reduce the height. But if we approve it tonight, then basically we approve it, and we then have no control over whether you can continue to pursue those options or not. And, you know, we are up here representing a body of people who actually oppose the 12 stories. And yet this sounds like there are still opportunities out there to be negotiated that could give you the density you need for this project to be profitable and the height that other neighbors could also live with. So if we approve it tonight, what guarantee do we have that you'll continue to pursue options that would allow you to be profitable at a shorter height?
I don't know that there could be a guarantee.
Okay. All right. And then
But
I guess
you
this
know
might...
where I live.
I'm sorry, what?
But you know where I live.
I do know where you live. And I will find you. I don't know who this is for, maybe for the attorney. The question came to my mind about, you know, one of the issues that was brought on very early when we were discussing this was, you know, the idea of planning. Like, cities have plans. You know, we create these plans, we spend the time, we spend the money to get people's ideas so that we can move forward in a predictable way. that's good for neighbors, it's good for developers, and so on and so forth. As I understand it, I mean, this PUD process, I understand that it's legal. I understand that we have the authority to do it. My question becomes, if we begin to approve PUD after PUD after PUD, which again is our authority, and it would be up to us to kind of regulate that, I understand that. But to me, I have some questions about that, because it then becomes random. Like, what's the use of having a plan? What's the use of having guidelines? If we can, every developer that comes in can come to us with a PUD. And if we like this one, because this particular developer has been so great and has invested so much, but then Joe Blow developer comes in and we say, then I question how might we then be liable for consistency, and how might we then become vulnerable to legal action and all those things. And these are some of the things that I've heard, but not just heard, but were actually our former attorney shared with us as measures of caution. So I'm asking you, what would you say to that to help us feel like it makes sense to go ahead and use this PUD process? Because my understanding is like, well, if you went through the BZA or, switched to mixed use, that would be something that's a little more consistent versus opening up this process of approving a PUD. You get my question?
Yeah, sure. So to the 2 points, the first is on the importance of planning, I think, and how do you sort of justify going outside of the bounds of the neighborhood plan. I think I even went to some of the design charrettes for the Northeast Neighborhood Plan back in, it might have been 07, 08, I can't remember, but I remember attending a couple of them. And frankly, I think at that time, people really wouldn't have conceived of the possibility of this development happening, and would have been really happy if they'd heard that it would have. So planning is important, and I think it's also important that you plan for the plan to fail. That happens all the time, and that's why you guys get paid the big bucks to make these decisions. I agree, it's not fun to make the tough call when you're having to adjudicate controversial issues. I don't think that's the case here. I know there is dispute about the height of the building. Frankly, I've seen all the emails, and I'm sure you have too, from people who actually live in the neighborhood, everybody who supports it.
Absolutely.
I've heard just from average people walking around town about, you've not seen the email? Was that what I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, were you?
No, and, I've heard from the number of people who are excited about having a Martin's open up downtown. Where a planned unit development is appropriate is when it becomes a unique type of project that can benefit from its own special planning. And that's where you can decide whether that's the case. In our point of view, a $50 million mixed-use project right on the East Ridge downtown that brings in not only a grocery store, but a pharmacy and 240 units of market-rate apartments, that's a special project. That's something that you want to hang your hat on. That's something that I would hope everybody would be at the ribbon cutting for, because people are going to be happy about this happening. The PUD is a way that we can make this happen quicker and in a way that involves you more in all the smaller details that go on. That's the rationale behind it. That's why I think why large projects use planned unit developments.
So you're saying that when Joe Developer comes tomorrow,
if someone tries to file a gas station as a planned unit development, yeah, obviously you're going to tell them to go pound sand.
Based on what criteria, though? Because we are ignoring the comprehensive plan, right? And we're also, yes, we are, in this one aspect of this, but a critical aspect that has to deal with height, right?
Yeah, I guess it might.
And also the scale and the design and the aesthetic that neighborhood, by way of, it actually goes back to 2004 when it was established as a separate and distinct area with a different height from the West Bank.
Yeah,
so then in 2008, there was a reassertion of the uniqueness of a village, a low to mid-scale, a non-high-rise district in 2004.
Make sure we have questions.
So on what criteria, if we throw out
the critical criteria here that is embedded in the South Bend City Plan, and then also in the East Bank District Plan, derived through a public process, okay, at the hands of this request from a petitioner. Great project, everybody's excited about it. But on what authority can we then, turn away other petitioners who are asking us to go against a plan?
I'm happy to answer. On your authority that's vested in you as the final arbiter and how you do make these zoning decisions. Height is the issue at stake here. Height's not part of the comprehensive plan, it's part of the neighborhood plan.
Yes, it is. It is part of the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Specifically.
We get into land use issues. Almost every other point of every plan that's come out of the city has advocated high density, mixed use, walkability, connecting public resources like our trails that we have, bringing in useful retail like grocery stores and pharmacies in a way that makes the city walkable, dense, and more urban. That's what this does. If someone comes in with a development that wants to put up a strip mall, or wants to tear down a block of historic homes to throw up some building, this is taking a vacant lot, a parking lot, and bringing in high-quality urban development. I don't think that's to my mind, I don't think that's that difficult to call. There's the issue of height. Personally, I think cities are supposed to have tall buildings, so it doesn't bother me. I guess it bothers other people. So I don't see it as that difficult of a decision.
Question.
We got to keep going on one.
Did we skip me this
Yeah,
one?
sorry.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
I was following up on hers, too.
Maybe for Jatin or...
We have to have questions again.
Oh, yeah, we'll continue with questions for Ryan, and then we'll come back to you for questions for other people.
Ryan?
So, and actually, you mind if I hop in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Dave,
you already ready to make it. Did we still have the questions for him?
Yeah, I had a question for you. I think in conversations with some council members, I think there's a sense that if this does not pass tonight, then we'll just keep on working on it and we'll get it figured out. Is there a legitimate chance in your mind that if we don't pass this tonight, that we're not going to see a grocery store downtown and we're not going to see a pharmacy downtown?
I think you'll see one, but it might be a long time before you do.
So if we do not pass this tonight, there's a good chance that this project on this parcel does not happen in any shape or form.
Right. We care about South Bend. We want to get a grocery store downtown. We want to get a pharmacy downtown. But we've been working with this for half a year. 90 days before the council, months before we applied for zoning, this longer and vague discussion for regional cities. Do we want to do it or not? If we don't want to do it, okay, we'll go build other stuff in the neighborhood. It's okay. The building's leased up, we'll keep renting it. But here, we have a great opportunity right now to say, hey, we want a grocery store, we want a pharmacy, let's move forward.
So,
okay.
To that point, I had some others, but since you raised that up, when you have the grocery store, you got this approved by regional cities. Isn't that testimony that you've already shared that it was done when your proposal was probably 7 stories?
We did a quick proposal.
I understand, whether it's quick or long, it wasn't that when the whole idea of the store came, whether it was a quick or long proposal, it was based on a 7-story building.
Probably. I think so.
So you think so? So which means correct? So therefore, the whole thing was at 7 stories when you got the kind of a go-ahead or a blessing of Mr. Bartles to join you. When you presented it for regional cities.
No, Oliver, sorry. The way it went down is South Bend was applying for the regional cities grant with other communities. We submitted a letter that was 2 paragraphs that described the building and said 7 stories, I think. The Martin Supermarkets, Rob Bartles, CEO, wrote a letter of support in that.
Stating?
Wait, did you? Or was that in the second round?
First or second?
I don't know. I think in the first round, I think in the first round, it might have just been me saying we'll have a grocery store and pharmacy. I don't know if Rob actually included the letter in the application for St. Joe County to the state, but definitely when we were awarded a regional city grant as a region, we had to actually go through and update the map. And in that, then we had to apply to the RDA, and in that we definitely had a letter from Rob saying, hey, Martin Supermarket's on board.
And how many stores was it at the time?
That's when it got big. And
That's when it got big.
$50 million.
So, but the beginning part of it was that. Question, in 213, some of the people who are here tonight have reference to what we've already been emailed and I've already shared in meetings. Could you please clarify, in 213, and developers are in the room too, you and some of the supporters who are here, I see witnessed here on the record, of clearly stating the whole point of being in opposition to this kind of proposal. Where you testified, hold on a second please, you testified against the shadowing. You're saying that the shadowing would cause all the problems that you said, and you shared many others. And there's the supporters that you have here who are now with you, who at the same time you brought to oppose that. What are the reasons why you now, when it was somebody else's project, you opposed it and on the same opposition? Now, when it's your project, you've taken and you've done a complete 180. Could you please explain?
Right, and a lot of this is probably just being young and learning in business. Boy, is it a bad idea to oppose your competition. The reason for it, though, is that Frank Perry, Tom Fonseca, proposed on the old wharf side, south of Colfax, next to the river, the triangular sand lot. It's been vacant for 16 years. They went to the ABZA, not the city council. They went to the ABZA and asked for a height variance to go taller. They increased the height limit from 60 feet to almost 100. That's not the zoning authority. The city council is. So they went to Mishawaka, Osceola, some South Bend reps, some county reps, and said, hey, in downtown South Bend, is it okay to go to suburban-like apartment building with a parking lot around it in the middle of downtown? It was a poor urban design, and it was the wrong people to ask. The city council should decide if it's changed.
So you're sharing with me that if that had been city council, it's easier to look back 2020 on Monday football.
I can't do that, can I?
I understand, but so you're saying that if they had gone to the city council, you would have had, you would not have directed your people to go down there?
They would have gone to the city council with a plan that was more pedestrian friendly, that wasn't a couple of towers and a sea of parking. I wouldn't have objected to it.
So in your testimony,
but it wasn't just the towers, it wasn't just the process, it was everything that motivated me to say, hey, we should speak up against this.
But in your testimony, did you share that the reason why I'm opposing this is because you have come to the wrong place, that you should have gone to the council, that your proposal is not altogether the way you described it? To my knowledge, maybe I missed that part of your testimony when I read it. When I read it, I saw your emphasis was on the density and everything else that's been shared today. I did not read, and maybe I missed the page, you may have shared it with me, but maybe what you just shared, it was your rationale for arguing against their proposal and against their hype and against everything else. Was your basis there, and had nothing to do it at all with the fact that they were talking to people from Osceola, other places, or that they were not talking to the city council?
I don't remember, but I do know that after they got it approved, I got on board, right? So they got it approved, the height limit became 100 feet, and what do? We immediately applied for another building that we were building and said we want to add a story. We went to the ABZA, and what happened? We got denied. We took another project, and we tried to go to the ABZA. What had happened? We got denied. So then we said, oh, we should go to the city council. This is probably and then we did the PUD, and you on the city council and everyone else approved us. And then that solidified, okay, now we have this height limit in the neighborhood.
Cool.
So, I learned a lot. I shouldn't speak against competitors. Boy, does it come back to bite you. Second, when, if you can't beat them, join them. And then, now that we've joined them, say, hey, let's take up a notch.
Cool. I appreciate that.
Councilmember Wood?
Yeah, if I could, I, first of all, appreciate the alternatives that you've laid out. And though I don't think it's necessarily productive, and I think it's awkward to try to negotiate those alternatives here at a council meeting, nonetheless, here we are. I want to try to focus on the garage, and to make sure I understand the alternatives. Will the garage, the number of living units in each one of these proposals varies. Obviously so. If you're talking about 127 feet, you're talking about either 144 or 168 units, right?
127 feet, 160 or 144 units.
Yeah. And the cost to the city to help you make this financially feasible is either $4.7 or $4.1 million contribution to help you build the garage.
Right. I think a better way of looking at it is saying, hey, we have an East Bank plan where the city approved the plan and said that they would pay for the garage. It's been 8 years, a recession hit, a hospital left town, high school moved in, neighborhoods changed. We never built that garage. We don't intend to build the garage, but we know that you need a garage in order to do any development on this block. We will chip in $4.7 million towards the $12.6 million we should have spent to build the garage.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we wouldn't build a garage unless there's somebody there to use it.
Right.
Yeah. But in your alternatives, your options, is the garage size static or?
Yeah. So the reason for the garage being so expensive and so large is because the parking lot, like if we were building on grass, this would be way easier. But we're building on a parking lot, and all those parking spaces are booked with the Commerce Center, the office building on the same property. And so we don't have, if we build a garage, it's not just building a garage to satisfy the demand of the apartments or the grocery store. It's building a garage to satisfy the demand of the office workers that are getting displaced when the grocery store goes in and their ground floor 100 spots of customer parking comes in. And so if it was all grass, it'd be way easier. So if we looked at River Race Flats across the street from the Emporium, that's like a 7-story, good density building. But where are they parking? Well, there's a grass strip behind the townhomes on Niles. That grass is becoming pavement. That's easy. But if there was an office building that was using that, then we'd start getting into conflict. And the issue with this site is it's not grass. It's a parking lot that's being used. And if we put a building on it, or if we take those office parking spaces away and say they're for customers to the grocery store, pharmacy, what do we do with those people? And so now we have to stack them. So that's the limit for the garage. Even this garage that's proposed, it's sized for the daily traffic that we need for the grocery store, pharmacy, office workers, and then a little bit of daytime apartment parkers. But at night, this garage is probably going to be half empty because those office users and that grocery store, pharmacy are going to close. And so there's a lot of capacity in this parking garage that if somebody wanted to build more apartments nearby, if the point wanted to go from 3 stories to 5 stories or 7 stories in increased density, if people to the south wanted to build, if we were to get the AP substation and put more apartments there instead of lowering the height of the building, then those apartments could go into that parking garage and make it more efficient.
It's sized for all those needs plus the 240 potential units you have in your optimum plan.
It's sized for the office need during the day, which is when we hit peak parking. And then at night, we have more than enough capacity for all the residential we're proposing and more. But we have to size it for peak demand, which is...
Can I ask you a speculative question?
Yeah.
If Fire Arts became available, which I think ultimately...
I'm on the board. I talked to him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I know you're trying to make that happen, and the city and you are trying to make the AEP site happen.
Yep.
The cell tower, you're trying to make that happen.
I haven't talked to him yet.
Yeah.
I'd be happy for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. If those actually came, as they will, I'm sure, come to development someday.
Sure.
And I think in the relatively near future, Will they be strictly apartment units like the one you're building on Sycamore, or do you envision them as commercial residential mix?
So the ground floor, if they go commercial, they're going to put a demand on the parking of the grocery store and on the streets. So if it's low impact commercial during the day, then we can have commercial on the ground floor. There's not going to be enough capacity in that garage though to do like an office building or commercial uses on multiple floors. It's going to have to be residential because, I mean, unless we build another garage, but I don't think it's necessary. I think we have so much office. We have 20,000 people who work downtown. We have a few thousand people who live downtown. Which means we're parking 20,000 people in downtown. We can build apartments. We can keep building apartments for years if we've satisfied the office parking.
Okay. Just on the perimeter of that block, though, the garage that is proposed as part of any one of these options is sized to accommodate more than a downsized building.
As long as the building is residential, or majority residential, yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Scott, thank you.
Yes, just one question. Sorry, I forgot it earlier. The East Bank Village Plan, and this is probably for the city, community investment. By 2017, this plan was supposed to be generating estimated real estate property tax, or real estate tax increase to the city of $2.7 million. Plan was designed in 2008. We're 20 days away from 2017. How much of this plan has been realized in tax generation?
Evening, council members. Brian Pawlowski, Acting Executive Director, Community Investment, 14th floor of the building. I think short version is we're not there yet, but I think too, it's helpful to point out that the garage that Dave was talking about, and compare that to the flexibility of the plan that people talk about kind of wanting in the different areas, because I'm sure it maybe made sense to make some of those projections at that point, but I think I would agree that some people wouldn't have envisioned this type of development coming forward at this time. And we also just have a parking study from a few years ago now that I think the council's familiar with. It kind of takes into account the development that was going on at that time, accounts for those parking needs.
No, time out.
Yep.
This has nothing to do with parking. This is
Investment.
The parking
This is
investment. How much investment?
This is total investment.
How much?
No, short version, no, we've not reached that yet.
How much have you reached?
The parking, I wouldn't have an exact number for you without going into it, but it hasn't reached that at this point yet. I only reference the parking because it would be a direct.
15%.
I'd have to go literally through the entire assessed values of the area, but I think suffice it to say the short version is we're not there.
So just from my calculations, and there will be a question to this, I believe, tell me if true or not, besides the Dave Matthew developments within the East Bank Village, the Colfax and Hill is the only other new development within that area?
The most recent one, yes, there's plans for on the river
What
there.
plans? What do we got right now?
Colfax and Hill
Okay.
has been the most recent.
Thank you.
Councilmember White, any other questions? Any other questions? Okay.
Nothing happened.
Anybody have any additional questions for anyone else?
Yes. I'm good now. Thank you.
Good enough?
So of all the options, perhaps if Mr. Mueller and Mr. Pawlowski could come up, of all the options here that we've been given within the last 14 hours, okay, we looked at one, option A, Mr. Matthews, for over a 4-month period, and that's what was presented to us. And then 4 additional options came in to council members by way of last night email at 7 p.m. on a Sunday. And then today, as a council member at our committee meeting at 4 p.m., I'm getting to a question on this. We have a letter from
our mayor with preferred options. So, and I'm looking at overlap here, but essentially within a 14-hour period, despite a 4-month lead-up time, and despite a 90-day, let's examine this and see what the best we can do is to come to a compromise. Why are we getting these at this hour? Why are we getting these propositions to consider at a meeting? Why is this the end result, and is this the best that we can do? I guess there's 2 questions embedded within that. That these come in from right and left field in the last 24 hours, despite this very important question for my district, and that would have benefit for the city of South Bend, that we're put on the spot to evaluate and to understand these. Why is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, the city team, led by Acting Director of Community Investment, Ryan Plosky, and in consultation with the mayor's office, we've been trying to negotiate this project for many months. I'd say none of these issues are new, so when it went before the area plan, the planning team outlaid a lot of issues it had that it wanted to see addressed. None of those were showstoppers in terms of the administration's view, and we were trying to negotiate this deal throughout the process. I think when you see these options, nothing focuses the mind like a sharp deadline, and I think I credit a lot of the council members for their efforts to get these kind of options there. We've been trying to push some sort of compromise for many weeks, and quite frankly, I think there was a perception that a 5th vote, you could peel off a 5th vote and not necessarily follow what the administration was negotiating. And so I think when there became a clear message from the council that you wanted to see a compromise and we were trying to negotiate that compromise, this is when you saw movement.
So really the focus started 2 weeks ago when we got that pressure. So none of these, if I could point out, none of these comport with the East Bank plan, or I should say, which is part of the city plan. All of these exceed that height. So where is the compromise, and with whom is the compromise?
I mean, I think it's a compromise between business development and planning. I would say, I think President Scott's question of how much development have we seen since the 2008 plan, Brian was being diplomatic. It's not very close at all to the amount of development. So, I think Mr. Matthews and other developers, probably even Frank back there, could say height helps make these projects viable. And so we have to develop what's possible with what we like to see. And these are, I defer to...
I just add too, I mean, the exercise of last week I think was instructive with the consultant who did kind of have access to the entirety of Dave's whole portfolio of files, designs, different things that he's got, and was able to kind of verify for us some of these numbers and how they make sense. And in terms of the negotiations, I certainly wouldn't say 2 weeks. I mean, the consultant was the latest kind of major intervention I think we put into this project, but even before that, post, I would say, Area Plan Commission, when some of the concerns started to come in to you all as well as to the mayor's office and to our office, we started to look at varying alternatives. And I think the other thing to keep in mind here in terms of business development and how it works, and members of the council who participate in the redevelopment commission can attest to this, the TIF resources are finite. We only do get so much, and so when we're looking at what we're able to get out the door towards projects, be it in the River East TIF or in others in different portions of the city, we do have competing needs for those things. And so to the extent that the River East TIF is alive and vibrant because of the fact that we're not hitting those investment goals that have been outlined in the 08 plan, it's not a very hefty TIF in terms of the overall funding that it has. And so we have to be conscious of the resources that exist there and when and how to expend those in terms of the different projects that come in, because I think fortunately now, not only Mr. Matthews but others who are
probably in the audience, have ideas for that part of the city, and we'll certainly look to potentially draw on that TIF, whether it's a tax phase-in or TIF dollars, and that's just something that we always have to consistently balance, because it's not just, a laser focus on one project.
Yeah, and since none of these comport with the comprehensive plan and those height parameters for the East Bank District, can you address, or either of you address, or perhaps Angela Smith from the Area Plan Commission, where do we go forward in terms of revising the comprehensive plan? How do you go about doing that? Because it's clear that there appears to be a push, again, trying to balance out the neighborhood and development, okay? A change in the actual height for the Central Business District, East. Is that going to, what's the vision, first of all? Is it an island? Does it extend to the whole Central Business District East? And where do we go with regard to changing the plans going forward? Because the 60 is on the books. The East Bank plans established by the neighbors and voted on by the council established it as low to mid-rise buildings. So this is clearly the options that we're looking at is getting at high-rise definition, changing that identity for that neighborhood. So where do we go from here, from your perspective, with regards to changing the comprehensive plan? What is that process, please?
I'd be remiss if we didn't put a plug for the Red Tape Commission, where we go over the code and existing plans and take a look at what makes sense today and what doesn't. But in terms of actually looking at the specific comprehensive plan, I'll refer to DCI.
Yeah, and I think Councilmember Davis has a bill that was discussed in committee and has been before about periodic review over the annual calendar year about all the various plans, neighborhood plans, TIP plans, and others. I think that'd be a natural place to start. I think in terms of that planning process, I think council would obviously, that falls under your purview ultimately. If you want to talk about ordinance changes to height or other type of variance and zoning issues, that would come back to this body as the result of maybe recommendations that would come from a revision of an overall plan, whether it's the East Bank or any other area.
And if we're changing height here by way of administration driven and or developer, I'll say and or, where do other neighborhoods plans stand? What's the impact? What do you think the impact will be, let's say, for instance, on the Northeast neighborhood plans, the district overlay that's there? What's the fallout from this decision that negates a standing plan that's part of our comprehensive plan? Does it threaten any of the 25 years of and Mr. Plowski, you were on that NNRO board, so maybe please address that for me. What is your understanding of the impact for that particular plan in my district, or even the one to the south, the Howard Park plan that was developed a year later?
No, I think it's a good question. It's one we've grappled with, and as someone who serves on the NNRO board, we've asked that question. I think the key here to remember, in a way, is when you talk about plan revisions that encompass developments of this type, mixed use, ground floor commercial, things of that nature, those are things that I think naturally end at the boundaries of what I would call maybe the CBD, the Central Business District. And so when you look at things like this, I think we would tend to look at those things as falling within that district. And so the kind of, I'll call it a hard line that's existed between where the CBD ends in that portion and, say, the NRO or the Northeast neighborhood writ large begins, it's been a pretty fine line for a lot of years. And the infrastructure, I think, that would support, say, a development like we're talking about this evening, necessarily wouldn't make sense in that particular portion of that neighborhood. But again, I mean, you'd have to have the same kind of process in terms of input from groups like the NRO, other folks in the neighborhood. But I'd also just bring it back to say that where we're seeing development now is not there. And when you talk about West Bank downtown CBD or East Bank downtown CBD, that's really where these kind of questions that we're grappling with now kind of come up. Not so much in that portion of of the city.
So in your estimation, there is no danger with regards to the Northeast Neighborhood Planning District overlay by virtue of this change that negates the East Bank Village plan?
I mean, I would personally say no from a planning perspective. I mean, I would tell you that the developments and the development proposals we've seen don't reflect, say, a Matthews type development. They reflect different styles.
But if one were to come in, maybe I'll ask Larry or Angela to please address that issue with the changes that we're being asked to, kind of plow through and disregard here for the East Bank Village. What is the impact for other neighborhood plans or district overlays that exist? I have some, specific in the rest of my district, and I'm sure other council members have them in their district as well.
I think Angela Smith and the Area Planning Commission's office is on the 11th floor of this building. I think the concern you're trying to address is one that was raised by some members in letters that have come to the council. The concern being that if a decision is made tonight that goes against the comprehensive plan or encourages a PUD in violation of the intent of the PUD district, that other developers may be able to follow the same path, and it would make it more difficult for the city council to address those items if you were to say, well, it was okay in this instance to go against the comprehensive plan and somebody comes into the Northeast neighborhood and does something through a PUD that is not consistent with that comprehensive plan, you say no to that project, there could be some concern that you are being arbitrary and capricious, and in one instance saying it's fine to go against comprehensive plan, and in another instance saying it's not okay to go against comprehensive plan.
So some concern or direct liability and challenge in a court of law?
I'm not an attorney. I just know that the criteria that has to be met, even in this instance, that in applying the PUD, even if those intent criteria weren't there, the 2 and 3 that you mentioned, that you would still have to look at whether or not this PUD meets the outline of the comprehensive plan, whether or not it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's one of the criteria set forth for the council in their decision making.
Thank you.
I have a question to her. Mr. Smith or somebody from the city, Mr. Mueller, does a credit, let's go to Mr. Smith, or Mr. Larry. When you are assessing and talking with people who come to you at the beginning, like Mr. Dave Matthews or others who were planning any kind of mixed use or central business development, do you use the credibility of the amount of money that a plan will propose to develop at the beginning of it to where it is now as an indicator to how much you value that plan?
No.
In other words, if before you tell Mr. Matthews about the central business development, you go back and look and say, okay, in 2008, this said it was going to get $25 million. Today, it's gotten $1 million. So it's only done 1/25 of what we thought it was going to do. So since it's 1/25 of what we thought it was going to do, we don't really have to tell them about that plan since it's not really to that level. Is that, look at it, or and those whose plan have got 24 out of the $25 or 96% of the plan, you really make sure that you emphasize that plan to them because it's been 96% effective financially, and the other one has not. Is that a part of your weight before you come to area plans?
When we're looking at whether or not a proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan, we're not looking at whether or not the financial goals or projects have been met of that plan. The overall guidelines of the plan stay in effect up until another plan replaces it with an amendment.
But wouldn't it be wise, I mean, in a sense, if a plan is only meeting 1/25 of its goals, and another plan is meeting 96% of its goals, wouldn't it be wise to counsel people whose plan is getting 96% of its goals, make sure they're more aggressive with that, and the one who's 1/25 of its goals, you don't really have to aggressively push that?
It's hard in this instance when you're talking about the financial aspect of it, because the financial aspect is kind of I guess there's a lot of other goals other than the financial investment. The comprehensive plan has decided to come up with policies and such that are consistent with the neighborhood. The financial aspects often come into projects that would enforce those policies. So those projects are often laid out and may or may not ever come to fruition. The planning aspect of it is looking at the land use matters, not the financial stuff behind the land use matters. If it was up to the council to, I believe as you've introduced, to regularly evaluate these plans, looking at those might be indicators that maybe a plan is out of date, or it was not a good policy to start with, and those would be indicators to maybe go back and revisit that plan through the process. But until that plan is actually replaced, it's still those policy and guidelines and land use policies that we have to look at, and zoning issues when we have to evaluate them from the area.
So you're saying then, until the resolution that we have on the table that's going to be considered in January 2017, until that's put in place, the emphasis on how much financial a plan has put in place, has achieved, is not one of your criteria to motivate you in your assessment of talking with your potential people who will be coming for the plan.
I'm saying even after that resolution, until a plan is amended or rescinded or changed, we still have to go by those land use policies within the plan. Whether or not the public or private investment aspect of it happens, we're still looking at the land use policies of the plan. So if a plan calls for an area, say for instance to be a residential growth area, and part of the plan to help make that was to invest in curbs and sidewalks. The investment in curbs and sidewalks doesn't change the underlying policy of that being a residential growth area. That was just a mechanism by which the plan was going to help to move along. We are looking at the underlying policies and land use items, not the mechanism by which they reach the plan. Those are, I think, what are when you talk about the 125th or whatever, the issues that you're asking. Those are the types of things that could be evaluated on an annual basis. The underlying comprehensive plan itself, without going back through the process, is still the underlying plan until it's replaced.
No matter how much it's met the financial obligations or not.
No matter how many of the policies or steps that they're hoping to gain, no matter how many of those are actually achieved, the goals, objectives, and policies of the plan are still in place no matter how many of the projects are met.
And one last question to you, Mr. Larry may join you on this. Could you, for the final time, at least tonight, or maybe at least for me, clarify what was your initial counsel to Mr. Matthews in 2016 when he came, recognizing this whole, after you heard his plan, after you got all the details, part of your role is to guide him which way you see best, recognizing this potentially may come this way. So could you please clarify what was the advice that you gave to him and the rationale of that advice?
Sure. When he initially came to us, we advised him that we did not believe that the PUD was the right...
Excuse me, one second. Could you tell us when that happened?
It would have been in May or June 2015. Okay. We advised him we didn't think that the PUD was the appropriate avenue to go down to. We also thought that the project was very complex and had a lot of avenues or aspects that would want other departments to feed in, so we advised him to go to the project advisory team, which allows the project to be reviewed by several departments, including engineering, Department of Community Investment, the chamber can come, they're on the invited list. So he came to the project advisory team meeting. Again, we looked at several aspects. We had discussions with Mr. Matthews about the options. One is to stay CBD and seek a variance, which is what we recommended. Another would be to rezone to mixed use and seek variances. And ultimately, we told him we couldn't tell him no if he applied for a PUD. We've never said that. Once the PUD was reviewed, that's when our recommendation came out. So we gave him those options, and he chose to follow the PUD planned unit development option.
And that was all at the beginning initial?
Correct. We also, as someone else had mentioned, Ms. Preston mentioned, we recommended that he have a discussion with the Department of Community Investment to look at reevaluating the East Bank plan if he thought it was so out of date.
Why was that given as a recommendation?
Mr. Matthews has expressed the fact that he thought that the plan was out of date and that the vision had sort of changed for the neighborhood. We still have to comply with the vision that's presented to us, whether or not somebody else thinks it's changed. So the option to revisit that plan is always something if someone thinks it's so out of line, the best way is to revisit that plan so that we can then make recommendations based on the current vision. But until that's changed, we have to make recommendations on the plan that's in place.
But if you gave him that recommendation, is there a process how long that would have taken, given the fact that we are on a deadline to June of 2017?
It all depends on, it probably comes down to funding. I imagine when he spoke with, and I can't speak to his conversations, but I know he met with the Department of Community Investment. Somebody has to prepare the plan. Somebody has to prepare the amendment. The actual process itself is about a 45-day process. So once you have the plan developed, it goes to the Area Planning Commission, makes a recommendation to the council, and that process is about 45 days. It's the development of the plan that's the lengthy part of it if they choose to, depending on what route they choose to develop the plan.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Any other questions from any other council members for anyone at this point?
Yes.
Okay, Oliver?
Okay, two last ones. Mr. Robinson, could you please come forth?
Please state your name and address.
Mark Robinson, Indiana Michigan Power, 2929 Lathrop Street, South Bend, Indiana.
Thank you. You've been working with us with AEP, different issues for a while, and enjoy working with you this summer. Could you please share with us the latest status of where AEP is regarding this, and there was some type of promissory letter or some potential letter that you all were considering? So what time frame are we looking at to potentially look at this? Because with the purchase of your properties, it can have drastic changes to this whole area of where everybody could be really at peace.
Yeah, sure. So I'll talk to that. So we have two substations that we're being mandated to connect. One is the old Drury Station. The other one is the Colfax Station. They're older stations, older vintage, and so we're going to rebuild the stations as well as connect them. In some of the conversations that we had well over a year ago, Dave Matthews and I just had a conversation. He said, it'd be great if we could evacuate, and we felt the same way. The Colfax Station, it's not a great placement for a substation, being right there on the main track, right? And I mean, as beautiful as I think it is, because nobody else does, right? And so we had some conversations about some type of an arrangement to move that station to another property that Dave Matthews owns. That is still very much a live conversation. We are a utility. It does take quite a bit of time. The mandate will be put in place 2019. Mid to late 2000, I don't remember the exact date, but that is the end date for that project. So those two substations have to be live, and the line has to be connecting those two stations by 2019. The letter that we talked about is the letter of intent from Indiana Michigan Power would simply state that we are still very much interested in moving that substation. We are very much interested in having the conversation about the land swap because although it doesn't really pose a lot of potential benefit to us as a company, if we're going to do it, we might as well do it in the best interest of the community at large. And we have been speaking with the city quite a bit. In fact, we just met Thursday of last week, I believe, with the Community Investment Group as well as our transmission organization, Transmission Planning. So the timing is the key, and unfortunately, we're not a year earlier on the timing. But we're gonna. So it can go one of two ways, right? It can go. We have to put everything in place in 2019. Mid 2019 is the drop dead date, and that's the only thing we'll guarantee you. But we could be able to piecemeal the project to where we're able to move certain pieces ahead of others, and if we absolutely can, we absolutely will.
So that's what's going to be in your letter of intent?
to work, so the land, we haven't even done a feasibility study on the land. There's several different options for the transmission line, including working with Notre Dame with their microturbine hydro project as well. So there's a lot of moving parts to that project. It is not a simple project. We have to have an open house. We have so many different things for community input, that type of a thing as well. So there is just a lot to... The letter would be an intent letter. It would not be any type of a guarantee that I could put on this project.
Just a strong intent.
Absolutely.
And typically, when you, I know I can't get you to go any further, except to say, when you do strong intent letters, what has been your success rate when you do your intent letter, knowing your market, knowing your industry, knowing your company?
So it's going to happen. Whether the project will happen, it's a mandate by PJ, which is the Regional Transmission Organization, right? They manage the transmission grid and the wholesale market of electricity, right? It is their mandate for reliability purposes that we do this project. So it will happen. When you look at the commitment that we made to the city via Smart Streets, before Smart, in conjunction with Smart Streets, but with the network upgrades that we had to do because of the incidents that we had. We're completing that this weekend, and there'll be a few more things, but I mean, when we make a commitment, we're going to do it. So again, this one why I'm leery to say I'm going to do something, because when we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it.
Thank you. I have no questions for you.
You have an outside deadline date. I know you can't guarantee anything, but I mean, in general, with this type of project, knowing what you have to do to get it done, what's the soonest you think that something like that can happen? I mean, given that you have all of these, you just named several things that you know you have to go through that process. If everything went absolutely smoothly, I mean, is it like 2018 or is it like 2019 is the fastest we could do it? And then after that, is there anything that that the city of South Bend could do to help move that process along?
Sure. So this understanding the danger of answering that question, nothing always goes smoothly, right? You know that. So a lot of that discussion is based on funding, right? Because that is a capital expenditure for our company, and those projects, you know, we vie with 10 other states for the funding for these projects. So a lot of that is, when is it funded? When are the feasibility studies done? When do we agree on a route? When do we make sure that we get right-of-way easement? There's so many variables, but yeah, if it went really well, it could, you know, it could be before 2019. I'll put it that way.
Oh, that's helpful. It could be before.
I hate to say.
All right, well, you can't say you help. I understand. And is there anything that a municipality could do to kind of help grease the wheels? Again, I don't know anything about what
Sure.
you have to do,
So
but
even in the meeting that we had Thursday, just knowing where existing utilities are, that type of thing. We're supposed to be getting plans. Roger Narrat's going to give us. Narrat is going to give us some plans and stuff like that. That type of conversation before the project happens is very helpful. That we're not having any setbacks that we could have had a conversation about earlier. So those conversations are already happening, and the Department of Public Works said, look, we're going to make this thing go as smoothly as we can. We will do everything that we can to make sure this project goes forward, and so that, you know, they're not in the way.
have you ever, like, when you've done this before in other places, cities all over the country, have you ever come in before your deadline? Just curious.
Before the mandated deadline?
Yeah. You have?
Absolutely. Yep. So they've given us plenty of time. That I would say that our transmission projects that we've had, and you'll be hearing about more and more of them. They've been doing a great job of not only open houses and notifying the public and staying ahead, but they're getting great about acquiring right of way. And I would foresee that again. You're talking a very specific piece of this project, right? You're talking about what we call the Colfax station, right? If we reroute the underground portion of that line and we can reconnect that, and as we build the other station, we might be able to abandon that early. I'm not an engineer. I don't know the answer to that question. But if we could, and it makes sense, we will.
So total time with regard to that question of feasibility of moving this, or the probability, whatever, how much time have you spent with our staff here actually looking at that hard as a question?
So we've had 2 meetings lately. One, I believe it was probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, it might have been 2 years now. And so this has been a project that we've seen coming for a while.
Okay.
But lately, and it's going to probably move a whole lot faster now, I would assume. I'd say, probably all man hours on our side in conversation with the city, probably about 40 hours, 50 hours.
What about women hours? That's all right.
So then, the phase, one of the recommendations from the Torrey Gallis group just this past week was, looking at spreading out this development and phasing it in over time. So I guess, to me, it looks like, maybe there's a 1-year difference there between your deadline and Mr. Matthews. Your build-out, Mr. Matthews, has to be by 2020, am I correct? Your full build-out, everything
Right,
on the ground.
I think we have 4 years, so 2020.
Okay.
But another question to ask would be, what's the likelihood that the site we're looking at is not feasible and you just stay at Colfax? Because that's a possibility.
I'm sorry, I can't hear. What was
So his question was, what are the possibilities that we stay in our current location?
Good question.
Because the feasibility of the other property is, so I'll tell you all the plans that I've seen involve just simply your location as a swap. I've not seen any for the existing space.
Okay, any additional questions from council members?
I have one last.
Move to comments.
I have one last one, and the last one is from Dr. Bueller. All right. My last one of the night. Dr. Mueller, it says in the letter that you read from our dear Mayor, Pete Buttigieg, there's a section there that I wanted you to clarify.
Sure.
It says, given to the timeline associated with the $4.9 million regional cities grant from the state. I want you to clarify that timeline. I respectfully request that the council support the administration's negotiating team and our efforts to arrive at a compromise. When I hear that your efforts to arrive at a compromise, that means that you haven't gotten there. Okay? And so, therefore, because you said arrive at, which I'm at an airport and I'm arriving someplace late, whatever, I haven't arrived there yet. So, first of all, what is the time frame that this has to be into regional cities, all approved and everything else that from a financial standpoint? Because I guess I've heard that's different than these 90 days. If this went down tonight, went up tonight, whatever, okay, but there's still a lot of time that we have to get things to organize to that time. And with your negotiation team, it seemed to me from this paragraph that this is even looking beyond tonight. Where are you on that?
There's a couple things. So the timeline, the target date is June to get the regional cities finance
June of what?
package, 2017. And, that's somewhat flexible, but as this project moves, if this doesn't go forward or we don't keep making progress on it, the risk of this project, the money going back in the pot, could go anywhere else in the region, increases as time goes on, when we don't make progress. So that's the first thing on a time constraint. It's not a clear answer because there is murkiness with the RDA, but the risk increases that we would lose it. On the second point, we still have to approve the tax abatement that is needed. And so when Councilwoman Preston asked earlier, what's going to hold Dave's feet to the fire to continue working on stuff and see if something comes through, this still has to come before council, the tax abatement that he needs for this project to work. So we think we need to keep, the administration wants to keep making progress and wants to keep trying to work with the developer to get to a good solution for the neighborhood.
So, in other words, your thoughts of the possible tax abatement process is where your negotiation team is prepared to focus on pending some resolution tonight?
Correct. We would, I think getting clarity from council on this matter would be helpful to figure out the path forward. And if we don't have a solution tonight, I mean, the risks do go up over time.
Which is correct.
So, yeah.
And so that's the nature of that paragraph, that when it comes to arriving at the compromise. The compromise you see coming in, not only in the two issues that you shared up front, but also in the abatement section.
Right, I mean, I think the abatement is, I'll ask Brian to come back up.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what you say when you said we'll be prepared, what was that? Our team effort to arrive at a compromise. I mean, surely this was, the way I read it, this is beyond tonight. So, where are you? Go ahead.
In terms of the tax abatement, if you look at that paper of options, and you look at option, say, D, which has been referenced tonight, you can see the different assumptions that are built in there on the tax abatements. For example, if you look at option D, it says 100 times 10. That'd be 100% abated over a decade. I think as the letter lays out, we've kind of pushed our compromise, which is a 10% abatement at 95, or a 10-year abatement at 95% per year for the entirety of that 10 years. And then in addition, for increased public and green space along the race waterway, we'd be prepared to contribute an additional $1.5 million. We've been driving that for time. The numbers just simply don't end up working out. The garage obviously plays a huge role in that discussion, but it just doesn't end up working out. And then, so I think as the letter also makes clear, the other option, which is B, if you look at those assumptions of 100 times 5 and 95 times 5, that's the assumption that we're baking in to meet financial obligations both for regional cities match as well as the overall project. So that's where we'd be at now in that scenario of option B, is that number of 100% abatement for 5 years and then 95% for the rest of the 5.
So is this, may I ask, are we looking at these options going through as a PUD, or are we looking at changing as soon as possible the comprehensive plan, and these going through under a rezoning for central business district with variances? Because these are all heights, we have varying height suggestions here. So what do you recommend with regards to the tool that we use going forward on this?
I mean, the question before us in terms of timing is the PUD. So we would prefer to get some clarity from council on their height limit. Sooner the better. So tonight we have a PUD before us. We could start a process next year should you guys prefer that process. But as we said, as timing goes on, the risk of the project the risks get higher that we miss the deadline. Not saying we would, just the risks do get higher.
So just for clarity, you're asking for this, for reasons of simplicity and timing, that it go through a PUD and that we stipulate the height based on one of these cafeteria options you've provided us.
I mean, I think in the mayor's letter, the mayor has shared his preferred height, and there's the other option of the 11 stories. So last question,
I guess related to that then, if we're looking at this Commerce Center PUD district, Commerce Center PUD, there's district standards that are entailed in that the petitioner has agreed to in the past or has mentioned or represented in his public statements. So two things. Are we prepared to go over that tonight and to address those and incorporate that into this PUD? And then second, is the petitioner willing to abide by the design standards for the Central Business District as outlined by the Redevelopment Commission? Who's prepared to address, I guess, those?
Just briefly, Councilmember Davis, I think your letter that you had asked for outlining some of the changes that had been made as a result of the developers' conversations with DCI as well as the APC, the letter that we had sent there that outlined some of those changes fall into some of the categories that you're discussing. I think the short version is yes, but all.
Yeah, because I think there's about district standards, and then it seems as if there was some trade-off for height standards or, public spaces, public amenities, those types of things. So
You're referring to the DCI, the past decisions?
Yeah, you guys had,
The 96...
a list of,
Sure, the 96-foot height limit on a previous project, I would tell you that that was an isolated project that was looked at in that circumstance. Public space, green space, and some other trade-offs design-wise were considered in relationship to the height, and that's why I made the decision. I think otherwise, though, the rest of those different development standards that exist within the CBD for our plans, as Jatin kind of outlined, deal more with the use aspects rather than some of the design aspects. Some of the design aspects that were concerning to the planners, the developer worked with them on that, and that was a list that was outlined, I think, in the letter that we had sent a while back now.
okay, so that's updated and that would be incorporated in...
Yeah, I think anything that we submitted there was automatically being part of the record. I believe it actually is part of the overall public file on it at this point. I think that's been submitted. So all that is, yes, public record.
Okay, with that, we will close questions.
No, actually, no, I'm sorry, we need a real specific, there are design district, there's district standards that I think going forward, sorry, but this is the nitty-gritty that we've asked. If we're going to go and approve these PUDs, we have to go through these different uses and development standards.
Okay, sorry, I thought you were done.
And the design standards we went through with staff, and we went through before the city council meeting, the informal meeting. I think I'm under the impression that there wasn't any objections to the staff's recommendations that we then modified our PUD application to meet. But if you have objections to any of those, I'm happy to talk about them, I guess. But I think I felt like we've moved beyond all of those questions, and the only thing outstanding was height and who's paying for the garage.
In terms of, I believe you're talking about the downtown design review area.
Right.
We have not sat down and gone over those with Mr. Matthews. I don't know if
Was that the building facade?
Yeah. No, it's what's set out in the redevelopment plan, the downtown design review area. So when you've done past projects, it's had to go before the design review.
At the building department?
Yes. Yeah. So those guidelines, I think she's asking you if you would be okay with following the downtown design guidelines in this project.
I mean, yeah, don't we just say that?
Unless you propose other architecture.
But we didn't.
You just referenced the, yeah.
Right, so I think that's part of the existing.
It's one of those interpretation
We tried to do that
things.
for East Bank and River's Townhomes and the East Bank Flats.
Okay.
Where we have either lintel or two types of brick. Yeah, I mean, that's
it's just, I think it's a
our
clarification.
internal design standards are way above the downtown design standards.
No.
Yeah, okay, so then just to clarify, as part of the downtown design review area, if he were to do anything outside of that, he would go in front of the design review committee who would grant any waivers to that. So one of the things with the PUD is our department is tasked with keeping track of any commitments or anything made in part of this, and so we have a chart where we have been trying to follow any development standards and anything that the commission or the council would recommend, we would incorporate also. So, for instance, we have incorporated in here that so far as what he's represented is that the parapet height would be 162, the overall height would be 175, exempt from clear sight triangles, things like that. I would actually encourage the council to, if they pursue the PUD, to not hold him to the square footages outlined in the presentations he made. In past projects, we probably would have had to hold him to that, but because this is a central business district kind of project and there could become flexibility as the project develops, we don't want to get into a position where we would have to say, you only represented that there would be 200 square foot of residential, you can't do 210. So any references to square footages of the per use, we would recommend that you not incorporate those items from the record. But some of the larger issues were, the main floor of the building shall contain at least 3 entry points, one of which would be a residential entry. That the area east of the existing commerce center will be reserved as open space accessible to the general public. The ground floor shall be a non-residential use. I don't know that there's anything else in there that Mr. Matthews would have any objection to.
Was it 163 for the parapet or 162?
I had 162, but it's...
Thanks.
Okay, so 163.
Ms. Smith?
That's what makes a difference.
Ms. Smith, have you seen all of the proposals that Mr. Matthews has sent to us over the weekend?
I have seen the options, yes.
Okay, in terms of your assessment, meaning Mr. Larry, assessment, is there, you've seen the mayor's letter here, of his two options.